Meeting for Monday, October 17th. And please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to take this opportunity to let you know that we met in executive session to discuss committee and committee volunteers. And I will open it now for public participation on any issue. You can also speak when we raise the issue during the run of the agenda, but you're welcome to come up now, and every speaker will have 5 minutes.
Hello, Commissioners. It's okay? Chris Todd with the Wayne Business Association and Christopher's Neighborhood Restaurant in Wayne. I'm here on behalf of the WBA just to make sure you realize how much we appreciate you considering O&P, okay? Free parking on Saturdays through the commercial season, for the Christmas, the holiday season. Merchants really love it. We do appreciate it. It's been a tradition now for years. We advertise the heck out of it, so people know they can come in and park for free and not get a ticket when they're hopefully spending money in lots of the stores. And then also about the Halloween. So Halloween, trick-or-treat, I think it's about 5 years old now, 6 years. I lose a lot because of the 2 years of COVID, so as my wife always says, I'm 2 years behind. But we do appreciate it. The town loves it, brings a lot of kids on that day. We are asking for approval of a tent for the weekend, just the weekend, to have some festivities. The tent's open to other vendors to come in and merchants to help, give candy out and everything that day. And it's looking like it might be a little cold, so if there's a band in the tent that night, it might be very limited. I think I just saw the weather report as 40, so that gets a little cold. But we'll make sure it's clean. We'll have some porta potties out there, no heaters, and it'll all be good. And it'll be broken down on Monday. So we do appreciate. We hope you pass it in the resolution and all that fun stuff. Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to make public comment at this time? We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Oh, sorry, I missed you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Claire Stribert. I'm a Radnor resident. I'm also on the board of the Willows Park Preserve. And I just wanted to, I know came in the agenda, there's the Darby Paoli Trail update. I know you're not voting on anything, but I just wanted to quickly make a comment that there are a lot of people I know in my neighborhood. I live on Lawrence Lane, and in the community that support trails in the community, and particularly along the Darby Paoli Road, since it's such a busy and actually very dangerous road. It would be a huge asset to the communities and the neighborhoods in that area to make the trails that are already there in Skunk Hollow much more accessible. Additionally, in all the things that we're doing at the Willows in terms of camps, fishing classes, educational classes, leadership activities, I think it would also add to make the park more accessible to all the surrounding communities. So I just wanted to briefly show my support for the trails and for that project in particular.
Is there any other public comment? I will look up this time. Okay, we're moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on any item on the consent agenda?
Public comment or things that you want pulled?
Right now, public comment. And I'm not seeing any, so I will ask any of the commissioners if they'd like to pull an item from consent.
I would. I, J, and L.
So I also wanted I too.
I would like C and Q.
Any others? Just so I got it, I've got C, I, J, L, and Q. Did I miss anything? Okay, we will start with Resolution 2022-125, approving the quote of Havertown Carpet Company to furnish and install carpeting and flooring per the attached proposals for the Radnor Township Building Police Department in the total amount of $10,558.87. Mr. White, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. Well, let me back up. As part of the 2021 budget, there was a line item included in the capital for $25,000 for systematic maintenance items throughout this building. Given that this building is pushing 20 years old, there are areas in need of carpet replacement, certainly areas in need of a fresh coat of paint. And so we had talked administratively earlier this year, identified some of the priority areas. The lower level of this building, which is high traffic in terms of officers in and out, as well as the public, including the roll call room, which is used as a public meeting space from time to time, needing new carpets and walls to be repaired and repainted. So that's what this item is.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I just, it sounds like a lot of money for not a big space, and just wondered how the square footage is, and if you got more than one quote, because I only see the one quote, and I mean, not that it's a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but it sounds high to me.
Yes, Commissioner, we did receive one other quote, and they did not want to do the job. In particular, I hope I'm describing this correctly, but if you look at the airports, they have modular sections of carpet, and that's what we're putting in this very high traffic area, so that if one thing becomes ripped or stained, we peel up the one piece. We won't have to approach the board for an entire carpet redo. And then if you look on the back of the second quote for the 3,000, that's that very gruff, it's almost like that rubber mat entryway. So that is a different type of carpet that's supposed to withstand extremely beating. That's our 24-hour door access point. So there's two different styles of carpet, but all probably made for what it should have been designed in the beginning. And I also don't think we realized how much you would use the room. I hope that's answering the question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this? No. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Passed unanimously. The next item pulled from the consent agenda is item I, which is Resolution 2022-105, authorizing the payment of the change orders number 1, collapsed pipe repair, and number 2, sewer replacement inlet and catch basin adjustments, collapsed pipe repair, additional paving, and quantity adjustments to Foresight Concepts, Inc. for the Brookside Avenue Storm Sewer System Replacement Project in the total amount of $29,997.36 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. Can I hear a motion? Get this. And a second?
Second.
Mr. Norsini, is this yours?
Yes, ma'am. So this specific change order regarding this project, so there was a few things we found on site. There was an additional existing pipe that was collapsed that was not part of this project, that was unknown. So we included that while the contractor was on site. As far as our paving restoration, what was noted on the plan was fine, but we wanted to be able to mate up to the Aqua PA paving restoration that they did on that side of the road so that it would be a more complete project. We also had to move some inlets because we have some utility conflicts that were not noted during our PRE1 call and our design. And what we're trying to do with these projects, instead of coming to the board for several change orders, is to clean them up at the end of the job. And in this one, we talk about quantity adjustments. So there's quantities on the plans and in the bid form, and when we go out in the field and measure, we pay the contractor for what they did. So in some cases, a pipe quantity may be X feet longer than what was on the plans just due to placement in the field, and there's also credits involved with this. So that's what this particular change order is regarding.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Just one. Why is this coming from the stormwater fund if a sewer, let me back that up. Let me just make comments. So, because I is going to be similar to J, which is, number one, what is the amount? Is there an amount set that doesn't go on consent? This is a $30,000 item. Do we have a number? What that is? So you could have a $2 million project that would go on consent? Bill?
Yeah, no, it's, when we're developing the agendas for the meetings, there is no set amount. It's just trying to manage the agenda load.
Okay.
Knowing that any of the consent items can be pulled off and discussed as needed.
Okay. So that was my first question. You can remove J because of that. Thanks. And then my second comment is, why is this coming from the stormwater fund if there's a sewer replacement? Should it come from the sewer? If you can just speak to that. Should it be part sewer, part stormwater?
So in all these projects, so this is absolutely a storm sewer and infrastructure project funded by the 04 Stormwater Fund. So all facets of the project are funded, just like the paving restoration, which I think if you went to the nth degree, you could say, oh, no, pull out the paving because that's not storm sewer. But reality, it's all part of this project. And there was a piece of, very small piece, I'll say 10 foot of sanitary sewer that we addressed as part of this project. We couldn't install our pipe for storm sewer if we didn't address that sanitary sewer. So, like I say, if you wanted to pull out paving, tree installation, and all these different items in there, they're really all part of the project in its totality, and that's why we put them in under that fund and for that project.
Sure. I mean, some things are for a project to get done. Obviously, you're going to have to pave over and stuff like that. But when you have when you have two dedicated funds where dedicated tax dollars are going, our residents get itemized bills for that. That's just my. Now, if it's immaterial, if it's 10 feet, I get it. If it's anything larger.
So the sanitary line would not have been replaced if we didn't do the storm sewer project. So that's why it falls under. If we had a project that had a considerable amount of sanitary sewer, we would definitely split that. Mr. White, our former finance director, would make sure of that, I can guarantee you. But when it's something so minor and it is specifically because of this, so if we didn't do the project, we wouldn't have touched the sewer.
Are there any other questions on this item?
Yeah, so I wanted to just ask you if this collapsed pipe issue is part of the sinkhole that was found on Askin, because when we had talked prior, we talked a while ago about this, you said that one of the pipes had to be replaced in order to reconstruct or fix that issue.
So part of this change order is there was a piece of pipe that connected to an inlet right at the bottom of Askin that we found that was crushed. I believe the pipe you're talking to comes from another street through a property through Askin and then down. So although they do connect, right, in the end, the pipe from Askin connects to this system, they are exclusive in the fact that this project stopped at the base of Askin, does not address what is on Askin. That may be a future project. I think there's more than just that pipe to look at on Askin, but this project was specific to Brookside. Askin could be a future project, or I shouldn't say Askin, that's a private road. The pipe that comes from our street through Askin solely could be addressed in a future project.
Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. And I heard Commissioner Farhi, you no longer wanted to pull J, but I think somebody else may have wanted to speak to that. Am I wrong? Okay, we will not be pulling item J, and I'll move on to L. Motion to approve the authorization to receive sealed bids for Strathmore Road storm sewer replacement at an estimated construction cost of $233,000 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. May I hear a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Norsini, this is you.
Thank you, ma'am. So this project, if you drive down Conestoga Road and look into Beaupre on a really big storm, you'll see heavy, severe ponding on Strathmore Drive. This also runs down a resident's driveway and affects her house. So we evaluated the line. It is totally deteriorated as it approaches the creek. It needs to be fully replaced. So we just received our DEP permitting, and the plans are approved. The neighbor is would be very happy if we were able to start this project. So this, again, is from the 04 fund. This is strictly a storm sewer project, an infrastructure project. So we are requesting respectfully that we are allowed to receive bids for this, sealed bids.
Madam President, if I could just ask Steve, it's a pipe servicing more than just one resident. We know that the area to be corrected is the residents, but it is serving a larger area. Just, if you wouldn't mind touching on
Yes.
that briefly.
Thank you, Mr. White. So Mr. White's correct. So these are two inlets at a low point on Strathmore, right? So they take water from, on Strathmore, they take stormwater runoff from roughly where Conestoga Road intersects it and from the stop sign up by Wild Haven. So when I note how it affected the resident, this is our infrastructure. So back in the 60s, when Beaupre was designed, the engineering standard of the day was to collect runoff and discharge it. And that's what this is. It goes through a property. It just happens to go through a resident's property as opposed to open space or something like that. But Mr. White is correct. This is an infrastructure project first and foremost, but it will stop the ponding on Strathmere and also help a resident. But the pipe needs to be replaced.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item pulled is item Q. Motion request. Oh, it was, sorry. Item O is motion authorizing free parking for the Wayne Business Association in downtown Wayne from Small Business Saturday, November 26, 2022, until the end of 2022. May I hear a motion?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thanks. Okay, sure. Commissioner Farhi, what's your question?
So I guess my question is, and it's kind of, I hear from one standpoint, well, we want parking in Wayne because, so people don't sit there and park there all the time, and then, but it's okay if it's during the holiday time. So, I mean, if parking is, if it stunts people coming into Wayne, then get rid of it all. I don't necessarily know that it's that big of a money driver for the township. So that's what I don't understand. If that's going to stop people from coming to Wayne, then get rid of it. If it's, well, it's only going to stop them, you know, it's going to make them come more during the holiday time. Well, I mean, it's either good or it's bad, but I feel like you're picking and choosing when you're going to do it. So, I mean, Chris, you're here if you want to speak to it, but I hear you all the time say, we don't want employees to come there and park there all the time, but why, won't they wind up doing that during November to the end of the year anyway?
Sean, I'd like to direct questions to our staff. Thank you.
I can answer it.
Yeah, let him answer it.
Well, it reads a little funny. We're just asking for Saturdays.
So, So
through
at this
November.
portion of the meeting, we don't have question and answer with the public.
Oh, all
So
right.
if there's somebody on staff who would like to address the commissioner's question, chief or the township manager.
Yeah, I'll be happy to lead in, and then Chief Flanagan can add any context that I miss. But from the township's perspective, this benefits, it's more of a promotional benefit to support the businesses of Wayne. It doesn't change the parking dynamic in the area. What it is meant to do is entice folks to come to Wayne, and free parking as an advertisement to come shop in Wayne. From a financial transaction standpoint, you're correct. The amount is pretty minimal in terms of its impact on the township's ledger. Hopefully more than offset by some sort of boost in mercantile activity, which is also taxed. In terms of the discussion about a shortage of parking and that ongoing dialogue, I guess the most generic answer I could provide there, and I can let Chris go into more detail, but we have been offering free parking down in this area during this time of the year for all of the years that I've been with the township, and we are yet to have a parking issue during that window of time, at least one that has escalated to the point where it's become an issue for the township to get involved in. So I think the goodwill and the promotional element of the program is weighs greater than any of the logistical parking issues.
That's kind of not my question, Bill. My question is specifically if we have, so if the, I guess it's hard for me to get it out. I just, is parking that much of a revenue driver the other 11 months of the year, say?
Well, so having parking revenue is important to the township. That revenue, from a financial standpoint, that revenue is important for helping to cover the cost of maintaining the parking lot, eventually resurfacing them, as well as covering the cost of over the enforcement part of the parking element. In addition to that, the parking restriction, making it paid, incentivizes turnover. It requires folks to, if you're in a 2-hour spot, you're limited in how long you can be in that spot. The businesses benefit from that with the turnover. We're able to, as you pointed out earlier, incentivize employees to park further away from the high traffic areas to free up those spots. So paid parking is beneficial to those commercial areas. But in both regards.
Sure. Again, just my question is why are you incentivizing turnover 11 months of the year, 10 months of the year, but not the 2 months that are going to be what you expect to be the busiest months when you would get the most amount of revenue for parking? If it's bad for small business, then get rid of it. I mean, I would be all for it if you could maybe make up some of that in mercantile taxes as well as just a general boost to the business district. But it just seems that you're picking and choosing when we're, when we're doing this and when we're not. And I mean, if it's good, then do it. If it's bad, then don't do it. But don't pick and choose and that's my whole point. I don't have a problem. I'll vote for it. I think it's good for small business, but I'm just always been confused by this, and I probably bring this up every October to November because it's never made any sense to me.
So
That's my comment.
I'd like to jump in. I think that our community is used to it. It encourages the big holiday push, end of the year push for for businesses. People are out and about. If we were to remove paid parking in Wayne for all the year, I think we are going to have really severe parking issues and fights and people overstaying and pushing out others. So I do believe in our paid parking system, but I also think that this is a gift to our residents and it's a gift to our small businesses in Wayne so that they can make the most of a month where people are really sort of out doing quick shopping in and out, and probably we're not not creating the kind of animosity that parking fights, if it were all year long, would have. So I am very much for continuing the tradition of allowing for parking in the month of December between Small Business Saturday and the close of the year.
that wasn't my point. Actually, my comments were directed to the manager. It just was.
Yeah, I guess-
I'm not
Wait,
trying to
but
put you on
this
the
is an
spot, Joe.
opportunity for commissioners to speak,
Well,
and you
I was
spoke,
waiting-
and
I
I'm
was
speaking
waiting
my
for
position.
Bill- I was waiting for
and I'm
Bill to
opening
respond,
it
and you
up
jumped
for
in.
another commissioner to speak. Anyone else want to speak on
I
this?
was waiting for Bill to jump in, and you jumped in.
One more, I guess, I am underscoring or underselling the element of, the township can't offer financial incentives to allow or to generate additional commercial activity in Wayne. So this, for lack of a better comparison, is our opportunity to offer a coupon to residents to go to Wayne to shop. I don't know if coupons are going to make or break the decisions to buy something, but it is a gesture. It's part of the goodwill. It's part of supporting Wayne, and that's why it's beneficial for this particular time of the year, in a time of year where people are shopping more. So that is the gesture that the township can offer. That's the olive branch we can extend during that time of year.
Any other commissioners have comments on this issue?
And just to the point, so we couldn't eliminate the parking altogether and then change our Act 511 to try to compensate. We can't change the Act 511, correct?
Yeah, no. The Act 511 component of this is not part of the discussion.
I guess I'd just, for a procedural standpoint, point out that we're not the ones who are making this change. We've been requested to make this change by the WBA and the businesses in that district. If they come to us and they say, we'd like free parking all year round, I'm happy to run with that, see if it would work financially, all of those other things, but we haven't gotten that request. So I'm just going to do, if we can, I'm going to do what they ask us to.
Any other commissioners? I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And just for clarification, did somebody pull Q? I thought so. We'll move on to Q. Motion requesting that all properties that are the subject of a HARB application be posted a minimum of 1 week prior to the scheduled HARB meeting. Bill, do you want to speak to this?
I'm going to ask Kevin to give the description here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. This issue has come up over the years about notification for HARB process and being open and transparent for when HARB projects are in front of the HARB board. And there's been various ways of addressing this, from legal advertisements and mailings to postings of the properties. So working with the HARB board, they thought that this was important to get this issue back in front of this board, to start at least a small gesture into publicly identifying these processes and projects. So we thought that starting with a posting out in front, identifying that a specific project is coming up in front of the board, that would give neighbors the opportunity to see it and then weigh in at the HARB meeting. So this was kind of the least intrusive way of really kind of promoting HARB projects to the public and to the neighborhood.
Any questions from commissioners?
No, thank you. That was a great description. I was
don't think
surprised it wasn't actually already out there in the,
Yeah, unfortunately, the HARB ordinance is silent on notification, so we thought that this was a good step. We do it for zoning hearing board, but that's a legal requirement, so we thought that this was a good first step.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion? on
So
this?
moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Okay, and then I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
And the motion carries. We will now vote on the remaining items of the consent agenda. That is all items excluding I, L, O, and Q. May I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda?
so moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to the business agenda. Item A is 200 South Ithan Avenue. This is a caucus final land development.
evening. Nick Cornelia, representing the applicant, 209th and Investments. The last time you actually saw this was back in July of 2021 when it received preliminary plan approval. You may recall that it's filling in the Trianon development from the 70s, and the proposal, which was approved by the board on preliminary plan, was for 9 homes under the density modification provisions. We haven't seen this since July, or you haven't seen it since July, since we were awaiting EDU approval from downstream. It appears that approval is imminent. This project is part of the connection management plan that's been approved by DCJA. We're expecting to receive approval very shortly regarding that. There were only 2 waivers granted with the preliminary land development plan. One was the waiver for the 500 feet features within 500 feet, and the other one was for sidewalks. You may recall this also went through conditional use approval, and part of the condition of that conditional use approval would be that the applicant would construct sidewalks along Ethan Avenue, and if the township was unable to receive easements or right-of-ways from the neighbors, then in lieu of constructing those sidewalks, the applicant would make a payment in lieu for the cost that would have been imposed by the constructing of those sidewalks. So as I mentioned, this is final plan approval. There are some comments from the township's consultants. All of them are acceptable, and a couple of them were the same comments from the preliminary land development plan for which waivers were granted. But everything else is acceptable. There's only a couple of them, and also that there was 1 or 2 drafting items that we will comply with.
Do we have any questions from commissioners?
Yeah, this is caucus, remember, too. This isn't up for approval tonight.
So I just want to comment, this is pretty much basically the same plan that we saw before. We just have a new developer who's taken it over, who has done an excellent job, I think, engaging with not only the Trianon HOA and the group in there, but also the neighbors across the street on South Ethan, and I want to thank them for their due diligence. Thank you for that. We had a public meeting with the residents, went over the plans again. Basically, there are no changes, no new houses. It's still basically the exact same plan. So I just want to thank the developer for their work with the neighbors. It's much appreciated.
A couple questions. Has anything been changed? Originally, you were going to put a sidewalk in. Was that correct?
That's
and
correct.
Are you still putting the sidewalk in?
We are, what is being proposed, if the township cannot get the easements or the right-of-way from the neighbors on Ethan, the proposal was, and the approval from conditional use was that the developer would have to contribute a like sum for use for a sidewalk fund. And I'm not certain of the status with getting those approvals from the neighbors.
You know how many houses you needed to get the easements from?
Steve would probably know better than I would.
I can shed some light on this. So we did have, this was back during COVID. There were several town hall meetings on this topic. I also went door to door and met with residents, and we were not able to get a contiguous sidewalk agreements with enough neighbors to get the contiguous sidewalk installed. So the adjudication stated if the township cannot do so, the builder will be required to provide funds for design and construction. We have not been able to get those easements. I've met with the builder, asked him for some specifics regarding construction costs, and Mr. Vaughn, we discussed the use of RS means, which is a common method for determining construction costs as well as design costs. Right, that's both. Both parts are part of this. So we're we're beyond the point, we know we can't obtain the easements. We've spoken to people that that's not going to happen. So understanding that, we're moving forward with the builder to determine these numbers so that when they do come before you for final, we can have actual numbers that they're going to have to place into escrow, which can only be used for sidewalk in this area, right?
So when you say in this area, so close geographically to Trianon, I mean, it wouldn't be in West Wayne, you'd try to keep it within.
No, it would
It's
be,
anywhere in the township, or do you try to keep it geographically close to cities?
you know, it would be
development?
on South Ithan, across the street from that development, where it was originally planned.
Okay. And has anything else been changed or
Now everything else remains the
just
same.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else from the commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next item, conditional offers of employment for 2 new Radnor Township police officers. Chief, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, Commissioners. We have 2 current vacancies for our authorized strength of 45. So we're not adding any new officers, but we'd like to fill these vacancies to start the very extensive field training officer program.
Peter, does this require a vote?
I need a little more information exactly what's being proposed, please.
Yeah, the township's process in hiring police officers, and I think this was recommended by our labor attorney, Joe Rudolph, years ago, was that a conditional offer of employment be approved by the Board of Commissioners.
Yes.
Once we have, if the board supports that offer or supports it through a vote tonight, there are additional steps that are taken administratively before the officers are hired. But this is kind of the critical step before we engage in the last couple pieces of the process.
Thank you for that clarification. And I asked because we had already approved these positions, so I was uncertain about the process. So thank you for that. I will ask for a motion and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? Is there any public comment?
Yeah, no, I have one.
Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry. So, Chief, do you have 2 people lined up? Have you started the hiring process, or this is just going to allow you to interview?
Commissioner, we have an established civil service list with candidates listed on that. So we are taking these next 2 candidates for those vacancies. We just, so the commissioners are aware, we did have 2 people leave of recent. So I want to be clear that we are filling the 2 employments that were just recently before you a couple months ago. I don't have the exact date. So these are replacing those people who did not stay.
So when you look at that list could be several months old, so the top 2 candidates could have already found another employment. Is that correct?
Correct. There's
then
a
you
civil
would just-
service ranking. Our civil service ordinance allows the list to be established for 1 year unless the Civil Service Board extends it for another year.
Okay, and one more question. So you go down that list, and then there's a certain cutoff where if they don't meet a metric or a score or whatever, you would just wait until that list, you kind of replenish it, or put out maybe a job listing somewhere to hire, correct? Or
Yeah, if the list was exhausted or people were disqualified through the very rigorous process and background investigation, if we exhausted the list, then we would have to go to the Civil Service Board, obtain permission to do a new hiring, and then we would reestablish another list that would, again, be valid for a year.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? I'm not seeing any. Any public comment? I will call a vote. All in favor say aye. That is a vote of 6 with Commissioner Larkin is off the dais. Moving to Resolution 2022-126, approving the purchase of 5 replacement vehicles for use by the Radnor Township Police Department in the amount of $298,000. May I have a motion?
So
And a
moved.
second.
Oh, second.
Thank you. Chief, do you want to speak to this?
Just one thing of note, we approached the manager and Mr. Tate, the finance director. There is a significant backlog kind of with everything, but in particular vehicles and emergency vehicles. So these items were requested for the 2023 budget. We are trying to get them in the door here in the year 2023. We believe that by asking for this pre-approval, that getting an order in, hopefully we will obtain that goal of replacing those vehicles. Just so you and the community knows, we're not increasing our fleet size at all. The other vehicles will be decommissioned and sold through various means when ready.
And I have just a question about the sort of the age of the vehicles that these would be replacing, the condition. Is this standard practice, and how long do we keep a vehicle before replacing?
It varies. So our patrol vehicles are the ones that have significant mileage and significant hours on them. As you're aware, and I'll let Kevin Gallagher jump in, but if you want to get a breakdown, but in particular, we're replacing our fleet vehicles with hybrid vehicles now. We're very excited about that. So we're maximizing. They're supposed to last longer. We're newer to the hybrid fleet. How many do we have? We have one in service, another one on order. We're hoping with the way they run that they'll increase their operating life, but I can't say that yet because they're new to the fleet. And then the next round has that. We can give you a breakdown if you'd like more. But the staff cars that don't go out, like such as detectives, they don't run at all like the patrol fleet. So the marked units get replaced in a ballpark of every 5 years, 4 to 5 years, depending on their mileage, usually above 100,000 miles. And the road hours from running are countless. I mean, some of these vehicles run from the day they start 24/7, 365 almost.
And so, just so I'm clear that I heard this right, all 5 of these vehicles will be hybrid?
Commissioner, there will be 3 that are going to the patrol unit, and those are hybrids. The one that is going for parking will not be a hybrid. It's an all-wheel drive, and it was an option, either all-wheel or hybrid. It's still a very efficient, I think it's a 2-liter engine. And the last one is a full-size SUV, and we can't get a hybrid in a full-size.
Well, moving forward, thank you. Any other comments from commissioners?
Just real quick, sometimes like the motorcyclists can break down and then like they did the Santa's delivery, and then they have to park it in my driveway. So it is always good that you replace some of these. Just a quick question. So it's approximately $60,000 a vehicle, if I'm reading that correctly?
Commissioner, it's approximately 67.
67.
Which includes the vehicle itself, upfitting, which is a major cost, paint, and just the graphics.
Okay, so that was my next question. How much is it? So it's $7,000 per vehicle to outfit it?
Upfitting
Or
is approximately 18.
So it's going to be, so it's 60 plus 7 plus 18, so it's another 25 on top?
No, we put in, it's 67 for each vehicle. That's the total price of upfitting the vehicle itself, paint and graphics.
Okay, how about the inside? Or
That's included in the upfitting.
Okay.
And it goes in cycles. So what I mean by that is, the vehicles we're replacing now, they've changed the design of them. So as much as we can, we transfer as much over to the next vehicle. With this current order, a lot of that has to be new. The seats, the cars are wider, a little longer.
Okay, and then I know that we did the whole new radio. That's going to be all, the cars will be outfitted to the new radio system?
That's a separate bid, but yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Other comments from the public? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. I think that was unanimous. I didn't catch all the hands, but we passed. Moving on to ordinance 2022-19. This is an introduction, approval of a handicap space at 422 West Beech Tree Lane. Chief?
Yes, Commissioners. The resident there contacted the staff traffic unit. Part of our function is we review all the information, and what I will say publicly is they meet the criteria for our ordinance, and we request that you approve this.
I will call for a motion.
So
Just-
moved.
Just for clarification, I'll let
Sorry.
you make the motion then.
Okay, and a second. Thanks. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, this is authorization to advertise, and there is a typo in the ordinance as to the location of the space that needs to be corrected, and we'll correct it before it's advertised.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from commissioners? Any comments from the public? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Well, we vote on an introduction. Yeah. Sorry. Anyone voting nay? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. On to item E, ordinance 2022-10. It's an adoption amending the Township zoning ordinance regarding parking within the front yard setbacks for single-family dwelling units located in residential zoning districts. May I please have a motion? And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Kevin, can you speak to this again?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. This topic has been discussed in front of this board probably since the beginning of the year. Back in June, the board adopted the first version of this that opened up the parking in the front yard to allow some flexibility for single-family homes. As part of that adoption, the board authorized staff to work with the Planning Commission to revisit that language. That language primarily was to allow some projects that had been waiting in the queue to get through. This version was introduced by the Board of Commissioners on July 18th. Spent some time in Planning Commission and is back in front of this board for adoption.
Thank you. Is there any comments from commissioners?
So I just have a quick question. So on the last agenda, we had a version that we tabled, and this is the version that's coming back that we had already, I think that Commissioner Myers had amended. So this is that original version that we had introduced, but then there was another one we were trying to have introduced. So this is the one that we originally introduced and amended. This is that one up for adoption now.
That is correct, yes.
Just to clarify, okay.
I don't want to get into the confusion of what happened after that introduction, but yes, this is what was introduced back in July.
Okay, so we are, okay, excellent. Just want to be sure.
Other questions or comments from commissioners? Is there any comment from the public? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to discussion and direction regarding the Radner Trail Extension Project. It's an update, arsenic remediation alternatives and Radnor Chester Road crossing alternatives. Mr. Norsini, tell us about this.
Thank you, Madam President. So tonight we have the designer of the trail, Bob Thomas from the company Campbell Thomas. And we're asking for very specific direction from the board for two items. One will be the crossing of Radnor Chester Road, specifically under, over, or above. And the other is how we deal with the arsenic mitigation. And Mr. Thomas is going to present options for both. And at the end of this, I would respectfully request the board give us direction of which way they want to go on both of these items based on Mr. Thomas's presentation and recommendations and your own thoughts. And then at that point, Mr. Thomas will go back, provide an amendment to the original proposal that he gave us for design, incorporating whatever comes from the board tonight. We'll be back before you with that. If so approved, then we'll move forward on the remainder of the design for this trail extension.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate you putting your thinking caps on late into the evening to give us some direction and guidance on a very complex situation. The Radner Trail, let me see, where's the, there's the mouse. Right, there it is right here. This is the section. The map you see is the circuit. This was what was started by the William Penn Foundation and the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. When the first section of the Radner Trail opened in 2005, people said, boy, this is great, but where's it going to go next? And that was being asked all over the area. People had this trail and that little trail and that thing. So the idea was to connect it into a big system. So the Radner Trail is now part of a circuit trail called the Valley Forge to Heinz Refuge Trail. It goes through 4 counties, goes through Radnor Township. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was saying the Radner Trail has now for several years been part of a circuit trail, the Valley Forge to Heinz Refuge Trail. And this is created, there's an alliance co-chaired by me and John Fisher in our volunteer hours. And we've been working with folks from Tredyffrin all the way down to the Delaware River on making this happen. Let's go. Here's an enlargement. So here's Valley Forge National Historical Park. The trail will come to connect to the Chester Valley Trail through Tredyffrin. There's the existing Radnor Trail. The piece that we're looking at right now is about 3/10 of a mile from Radnor Chester Road, extending the trail east to the Blue Route, but not over it yet. Then what's been studied, the township funded, with the help of DCNR, a study that we performed several years ago showing how to take the trail down through Radnor, Haverford, Upper Darby, around the Cobbs Creek Golf Course to connect with the existing trail here that is going all the way down to the John Heinz National Wildlife Refuge. Parts of this trail are also the September 11th National Memorial Trail and other connections that are very important to Radnor Township residents as well as the region. These are the drawings that we had done under our current contract, where we looked at, here's Radnor Chester Road, the TAP trail is over here, the existing trail is here on the west side of Radnor Chester Road. We would be going to the east. Here, and I'll enlarge this in just a moment. So what we have is the Radnor Chester Road, the TAP trail. At this time, we were looking at a crossing at grade because we had done design for a large size culvert. The price was too high for the budget at the time. There's more money available now, so there are a number of options depending upon how you'd like to go. What we also discovered, interestingly enough, is that the right-of-way is quite wide in this area. It's about 100 feet, so that we could actually build a ramp down to the rail bed without going on anyone else's property. This was really important. We thought that if we did that, we'd have to go in another property, but when we actually took a really good look, Gilmore did survey work for us that we could tie into the TAP trail and back to the Radnor Trail. And just going further east, these are the properties. There's a culvert here. Brown's Run is over here. And then the trail goes out and will end temporarily as it approaches the Blue Route. If you've been on Schuylkill Banks in Philadelphia, you know the trail was extended about a half a mile down to Christian Street while the big bridge is underway. It is amazing how much use that gets. I do it myself. On my way to work, I'll just get a wonderful extra mile or two in by doing that, and many people do that. So the alternatives we're looking at, and we'll show you illustrations. During the course of the project, we did a phase 1, and then getting into more detail, the environmental geologists at Gilmore did testing and discovered that there was arsenic in the and found the locations and the concentrations of arsenic that was in the rail bed, possibly from defoliation, possibly from railroad ties, but it's there. And then they did additional study of how deep it was, so we understood the volume. So the real question is, if you go into the DEP Act 2 program, you have 2 choices. One is the excavation and removal of arsenic-impacted soils, and that's just what it is. You know where the extent of the arsenic-impacted soils are, you know how deep they are, you know the volume, and we did a calculation of this, I'll show you, of how expensive it would be to remove that soil to somewhere where it's properly treated and bring in clean soil. It's fairly expensive. The other approach, which is often done, especially on trails, is what's called the engineering and institutional control of arsenic-impacted soils, and that big mouthful can be reduced to capping. If you cap the soil with the pavement of the trail, and you have to monitor it in perpetuity, but that is a less expensive method, and it also is successful in giving the approval that you need for safe use of the trail. We're looking, we've heard a lot of comments in the last year. We know there are commissioners who haven't been involved in this project until, let's say, more recently. And people had very good questions, as do I. I bicycled here tonight. That's my bike over there. And I did take the train to Radnor Station, but I came from there. And I get it as to wanting things to be safe. The more that I've been able to do to make roads, bike routes and walking routes free of as many crossings as possible, at crossings that are separated, it's really wonderful. And avoiding conflict and avoiding danger. So the things that we did look at were, of course, the at-grade crossing. We also studied and actually had our engineers at Ritu do a design for a large-size culvert, and I'll explain why there are large and small ones. The small culvert was another one to accommodate pedestrians and bicycles, and then we were also asked to just take a peek at what would it take to do a bridge over Radnor-Chester Road. It would be a huge structure to climb up and climb over Radnor-Chester Road, but we did look at that. Now, why do you have small culverts and large culverts? And of course, they vary considerably in cost. If you're just accommodating pedestrians and bicycles, you don't need a high ceiling. But one of the things that we're very concerned about is that when you go to extend this trail, you're going to have to, and when you're going to, first of all, build the trail to 0.3 of a mile, you need to bring in construction vehicles. And we looked at the construction access route through township-owned property, and what we found is if you have a large culvert, that's great because then you can bring the triaxle trucks in to haul things away, to bring in the supplies and materials and construct it. Of course, there's a much greater cost associated with that. So let's go and take a look. What we found was that for arsenic, removal of the contaminated soil, the arsenic impacted soils, these estimates were done last year in detail, was $683,850. These numbers with inflation would need to be updated. The other is that if we did capping, we were told the cost would be only about an additional $104,000 over what would already be included in part of the trail construction cost. You're building the trail anyway, so some of that trail is acting as a cap, and there's other things. Of course, the continued inspection and annual maintenance would be required indefinitely, as it would be with other elements of any park or trail or greenway improvement. Just visually what we're talking about, an at-grade crossing, you can see there's a good example. The small culvert in the lower left provides adequate height for walking and biking. The large culvert is large enough for trucks to go through. And then, of course, you have a trail bridge over a roadway. One of the things with the trail bridge, everything that we do in trail work meets ADA to the extent possible, and it certainly is possible, but you would have very long ramps to climb up and go over Radnor-Chester Road. You would need a high clearance over Radnor-Chester Road because it's a state highway, but it's doable. So let's take a look. I think you have these tables in front of you. So it's actually all the same table and just being highlighted for each thing. So what you can see is that at grade, we looked at the ease of construction, 1 being most easy, 3 being most difficult. There are other things that aren't necessarily dollars, but they're things that affect the community and affect the citizens and the visitors and the people who work in Radnor Township. Road closures. Oftentimes you'll do a more expensive approach if you can reduce the time of road closure. On the other hand, sometimes the the savings are such that you feel it's worth doing a road closure. We looked at where we would get construction access, which would be from Radnor Chester Road, but we need staging. And in the case of the grade crossing and the pedestrian culvert and the trail bridge, the staging would be east of Radnor Chester Road. For the large culvert, the staging would be to the west. And part of it is the timing. You'll see also that the period of closure for a pedestrian culvert is longer than for the large culvert. And the reason is, what you do is, with the large culvert, you go in, you excavate, you build the culvert, and you finish that work. But then you have a culvert that's big enough for construction vehicles to come through. We're looking at having an access road from Radnor Chester. So all the traffic's back on Radnor Chester. The construction vehicles are happily going underneath Radnor Chester Road and building the rest of that 3/10 of a mile. If you go with a small culvert, you have to build the trail first when you can get construction vehicles in. So the road is closed, it's cut open, construction vehicles come in for a while, then you go back and you build a small culvert. When you build a small culvert, the other thing that we included is that the ramp from Radnor Chester Road that goes down to the trail, so you have the tap trail, and people want to go from the tap trail down to the Radnor Chester Trail, but you also in the future want to be able to bring in construction vehicles when you extend the trail further east. So we're talking about also building not just a path that comes down, but something that's strong enough to hold construction vehicles. So there's a retaining wall to cover that. Utility relocation is a big issue. We discovered, ever since I started working on the Radner Trail back in the 1980s, we did our first feasibility study for the township a long time ago. I knew that the trolleys used to run there. They ran underneath. We all seen pictures of the station there. And but what's that big pipe that goes across? Obviously, that was put in when the trolley was there. Well, it's that utility pipe, right? Is what is it? We have that in our plans. But the important thing is that where does it go when it comes down? Because if we're coming up to the road, we'd have to really deal with that. Well, it turns out there's a water pipe that comes along and then turns and goes into the middle of Radnor Chester Road, right where we want to cross. So we don't have to disturb a square inch of pavement to make a connection for an at-grade crossing. So there's no disturbance of utilities, and you can see that here. Utility relocation under grade crossing is none, because that pipe comes down, it turns and goes into the middle of the road. We had all that surveyed, so that works. But with the culverts, you'd have all the underground utilities. You have gas, you have a gas line, you have water, all that would have to be relocated or adjusted. With a trail bridge, it's mostly overhead utilities. You have a bridge coming along that's going to go over Radnor Chester Road. There are wires up there. They would have to be raised or lowered under the bridge, whatever. We already talked about future construction access. And then the other, of course, is cost. We saw the grade crossing approach at about $650,000. The large culvert, the most expensive, the 2.2, and the pedestrian culvert at 1.7 million, and the trail bridge at about 1.3. And you'd say, gee, a bridge takes a lot of money, but moving wires is a lot easier than moving utility mains like water and gas. I mean, it's not just a matter of relocating them. What do? You have to, obviously, when you go to relocate or reroute them, you have to turn them off. That affects a lot of people. Wires is something that can happen pretty quickly. So with all of that in mind, we looked at our recommendation. And if you said, Bob, if you had unlimited time and unlimited money, what would you choose? I would choose the large culvert, because we'd have a grade separated trail, we'd have access for future construction. That would be the best. Of course, as with most things, it's the most expensive. One of the things that we also saw, if you did the at-grade crossing, that does not preclude going back and putting in a bridge. And I would say, for example, the bridge that we've been working on the cross-county trail in Montgomery County, there's an at-grade crossing with traffic lights, but the bridge is going in now. It'll take 4 or 5 years probably to finish that, but it's been funded. And people are saying, that's great, it's going to happen. So part of what we're looking at is making sure that what we do does not preclude some future improvement. That's really it. We're saying that the capping approach, the at-grade crossing approach, are the things that could be done most quickly, and with a good chunk of the money that we have, or that the township has already, would work, and getting matching funds for these things would not be particularly difficult with the funding streams that are out right now. We've met regularly with DCNR. DCD gave a grant. The county, through its Delco Greenways grants, has been very generous. It was, almost $487,000 came this past year. So this is, because it's a circuit trail and because the trail is so successful and is not just recreation, but serves so many things in the community, there's great interest in funding this. So with that, those are the things. I'll be delighted to answer questions, discuss anything, and then, as I say, what we're really looking for is guidance from you on which way you'd like to go.
Thank you so much. That was a very thorough, good presentation. I am one of those who needed to be brought up to speed, so
That's
thank you
fine.
for that. I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to start with Anna Marie Jones.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Very
Thank
good
you
to
for
see
that
you.
recap. It's been a while since I heard the presentation, so I'm really excited to hear it again. And my first question is regarding the arsenic. So we have obviously 2 choices, and one is expensive, and if we were to dig up and disturb the arsenic, does that create any type of negative situation to the environment and people to remove it and have it in the air or whatever, like you're disturbing it, right? So, and secondly, if you keep it there and you don't disturb it, it's not doing anything right now in terms of toxicities or, so is it
That's
better
our
to just
understanding. Our geologists did test. Is it getting down below where it is now? What we were told is it tends not to move a great deal.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The arsenic tends not to move around a great deal.
Okay, so
It's where it is
stable.
because of what was dumped there at some point.
Okay, so if we were to go with the less expensive option and just cap it, we're not disturbing anything, we're not creating any, we're just, it sounds like a better option to me is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, the other thing too that we have to consider is that at the same time we're concerned about environmental issues. Other environmental issues include stormwater management. The first section of Radner Trail includes all kinds of piping and shoulders that receive rainwater and down. There's a whole bunch of stormwater management provisions that were built into that. We need to do the same thing. This is a trail with a 10 to 12 foot paved surface and then crushed stone shoulders, which allow for percolation of water. We will investigate pervious pavement. We've seen, I guess with pervious pavement, it's great because you get percolation. It also comes with a big burden of cleaning. It has to be vacuumed regularly with the right kind of equipment because, look, if you have something that's filtering stuff, eventually it gets clogged. And so that's something else. If we can take care of the stormwater, and we would work closely with the County Conservation District on this, as we have on all of our projects in the township, we would look at the trail is fairly narrow, relative to like a big parking lot. So there's a lot of edge in which we could take water. We would do that. If we excavate, the thing that we are also concerned about is then that railroad bed was built about 1906 or 08, I think it was. It was compacted for 50 years by trains running back and forth, and it's been sitting there. So if you disturb it, right, then you have issues of we're bringing in fill, and even if we're compacting it, it's never going to be as solid and as stable, and as easy to maintain as something that's been there. We're always very careful about disturbing an old rail bed if it really brings a lot of value in its stability.
Thank you. And my second comment, well, first was a question. This one is more of a comment. I am really just a little nervous, and I know a lot of residents off of Radnor Chester Road are also concerned about, not just a backup on Radnor Chester Road if there were to be a grade level crossing, but also accidents.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you see that a lot in other roads that are similar to Radnor Chester Road? I mean, we also have that intersection going on to Lancaster that already gets pretty crazy at certain times of day. So,
well, we've both designed. We were the architects for much of the Schuylkill River Trail in Montgomery County, all the way from Philadelphia to Norristown and to Phoenixville. There are a lot of grade crossings. We put a lot of energy into making them safe and to see how they work. The other place, we're on the planning team. We didn't do the actual design, but it's been built, is the Chester Valley Trail. I'm thinking of other trails that are in suburban areas that have a lot of traffic. And there are grade crossings, my God, even of Route 100. Now with the proper signage, lighting, we designed the Perkiomen Trail. There's several crossings of Route 29. The railroad, wiggled back and forth across Gravel Pike. Well, Gravel Pike was a gravel road with horses and buggies and maybe a tractor or two. Obviously now that's a very different situation. So there were things that were done for that grade crossing to improve sight lines, to give warnings. And the other thing is, we discussed this early on with PennDOT, District 6, before we even started to look at this, even in the preliminary phase. And we worked together and spent an hour one afternoon looking at look, we all know what Radnor Chester Road is like. I just was on it myself, with 3 lights, big one in the front, 2 in the back, I understand, and riding very carefully and et cetera. But the thing that, let me see, with the grade crossing is to look at what are the sight lines, what's the actual speed, what's the posted speed, and they have limits. If it was above a certain speed, they would say, no, we will not approve a grade crossing. A new crossing like that. But they took a look, and we've had many situations where we've not been allowed to do that. We've had to find another solution. So they do feel that it could be done. Again, I would say there's no question. Spending the extra money for the culvert, the extra time it would take in the long run, that would be wonderful.
And if I had to share I will share my opinion. I do agree with you that a culvert is the best way to go. It's just a matter of, if we're going to agree to spending money on the large or the smaller version. But so can you once again address the extension? So you're saying it's easier to, not only create the culvert from the beginning, being able to get trucks into a larger culvert, but explain once the culvert's built and we need to connect it, the trucks have to go back and then create that extra.
Well, the plan, of course, in the plan that was approved is to get it, to jump across the Blue Route, right? There's some ramps, there's a good place for a bridge. We may actually go underneath the Blue Route at Lancaster where there are wide shoulders, then go up and then do a rail with trail with the Norristown high-speed line. Mm-hmm. So we've met with SEPTA, and we're looking at that. So in doing that construction, you would need to bring construction vehicles in. So the nice thing about having that big culvert, there are other benefits too. Radnor Chester Road is only 2 lanes. We've asked PennDOT; they don't intend to widen it. They're not, so that because if you build a culvert, you don't want to build a culvert and then discover you have to extend it, 10 years later. So there's no plan to widen Radnor Chester Road. So one of the things when you go through a culvert, do you have to light it? Does it feel safe? With a just a two-lane road with a high culvert and flared entrances, you'd hardly know you're going into anything dark. There'd be a lot of sunlight penetrating that, so that would be another benefit.
Who else would like to ask questions, make comments? Maggie, why don't you go, and then you, Sean.
Sure, I just have a couple of simple questions.
Sure.
The grade crossing, you're not talking about going up toward Lancaster Avenue and then across where the crossing is now. You're talking about going straight across as the trail would
Yeah.
exist. Thank you.
So the
and-
tap trail would come down, as it does now, to the Radner Trail,
Yes,
right? The grade crossing would be there,
would be there.
right? The two join.
So you'd have to build
Yeah,
it back
yeah,
up to the road.
Yeah, and then the trail would, from there would go down to, as it does today. That-
Right, and why does the grade crossing cost 600 and odd $1,000? That seems like a lot for a grade crossing.
Well,
Is it filling in those?
It's the grade crossing alternative. The grade crossing itself, here I have some numbers here. No, the biggest part of the cost is when you come from Radnor Chester Road on the east side, and if we're doing the grade crossing, right, we're not putting, we need to be able to bring construction vehicles down from Radnor Chester Road in the future to the trail.
So it's the
Which
ramp.
means that trail is not just a 10-foot trail for pedestrians and bicycles, it's taking construction vehicle loading. So we're going to have to build a retaining wall, right? The trail is down in the cut, you have a shelf for the trail, but you need a retaining wall to hold that back. And that's a highway level retaining wall. That's where the
Okay,
cost comes from.
so it's really the ramp that
It's
makes
the
it
ramp.
so expensive.
Right.
And the ramp that if you did the small culvert, the ramp would still have to be off to the
The
side,
ramp
I
still needs
assume.
to be there and still needs to have that retaining wall.
That same thing. So that expense is added into the culvert expense. That's there no matter
We don't
what,
wanna- We don't want to come back in 5 years, to build a bridge and somebody says, we can't get in there.
Right, no, obviously.
We're going to have to build a new road from Lancaster
Yeah.
Pike or something.
Yeah.
So we've really thought that through. And we've talked with neighbors as well, Dr. Hanson and others who've been very helpful in giving us access, actually,
Mm-hmm.
just to do the study. Good.
And as far as the arsenic thing goes, do you have any handle on how much that monitoring, I assume it's like an annual check for arsenic all along the trail, how much that costs? Like how much are you putting as an annual?
I don't have a number in my head.
Because that would be really helpful. I mean, if that's
Yeah, no,
$50,000 a year, it adds up
we could certainly
quickly.
check on that.
Yeah.
I'll speak with.
I mean,
Dr.
I don't
Hanson
know
on
how many places you have to check it.
Yeah,
that
because
sort
we do know the length of where, the whole trail would be paved. Not all of it needs to be capped. I mean, you'll be walking along the trail or bicycling. In some places you'll be over arsenic, in other places you'll just be over the original road bed.
So it's not the whole .3.
It's not the whole thing,
Got
right?
it.
There's certain places.
I didn't know.
So those places are now well-known and established. We have the locations. Let me check. And it shouldn't be hard to come up with some idea.
Just to
because,
get a handle
we
on
know
that
it's
number?
X linear feet, there's some soil adjacent to there. What do you have to do, how often, and what do you have to do?
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I think the other is so expensive that it's hard to believe. And then you alluded to that huge pipe that we see on the current bridge.
Yes,
And that was originally the utilities going across there when the train went underneath?
yeah.
Could that not be reused for the utilities that needed to be
Oh,
shifted?
That's an active pipe.
So why would you were saying you would have to move gas lines and this and
Oh,
that?
once you get across, it goes down. Right, so if you're going to build.
But it goes all the way across, it parallels Radnor Chester. I mean, I see it, it's like this big around.
Right, but the excavation you'd have to do for the culvert is much wider than just the trail.
I see. Okay, got it, thank you.
Sure.
So I guess my first question's probably been answered. The arsenic is man-made. It was dumped by probably a railroad company that's well out of business. Am I correct?
Right, the Philadelphia and Western Railroad is no more.
Okay. So there's
It
no
was
way to
purchased
recoup
100%
some of that
by
insurance.
Department of
Okay.
Highways, right?
I'll move forward with that. I did get a bunch of emails. Well, let me go on with the arsenic. So I know arsenic is bad. I know it's poisonous. But what are the environmental issues if we don't do anything? Do we have to do something mean, if there's not well water and it's not disturbed, I mean, you know.
I
you
understand
tell
your question.
kids, hey, don't eat the dirt because there's arsenic in it. But what is the real environmental issue if we don't do anything? And then could there be plants that could somehow get that out of there? Or is it just once it's there, it's there? It's an element like lead or something, you just can't get it out. I mean, and you gave us A and B, but is there a C, which is if we don't do anything, A, is it legal? And B, if we don't do anything, what are those environmental issues, assuming that someone doesn't have well water around those areas?
Yeah, the real issue is that right now, that's an abandoned railroad.
Say that again.
It's an
I'm sorry.
abandoned railroad bed.
Got it. Mhm.
Right? So, in theory, nobody's using it, right? It's not a public facility. When you open something to the public, right, there are requirements of safety. So that's why we did the testing, right? And that's why there's a certain percentage of so many parts per whatever million or whatever of arsenic there. That's not considered a safe condition for some place where people are walking or just engaging in activity.
Okay, so then it's got to get remediated.
Yeah, as far as other alternatives, we certainly asked that question. No, you can't. Plants would not do that.
Okay.
I know what you're saying. There's sometimes some
Yeah,
creative.
I mean, I'm just trying to think outside the
Yeah.
box here. If you got to get rid of it,
Right.
absolutely do it. I'm not saying not to. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering. Sometimes, for instance, asbestos is another thing. Sometimes no one wants asbestos in their house, but sometimes you'll do more damage if you go in and try to remediate it as opposed to leaving it there.
Oh, well,
And
if
that's
you,
just-
well,
just
let me
another
make an
example.
analogy. Yep.
So,
Right, if you leave it there, right, if you come in a property, any place that has human habitation, and you see there's asbestos, there are two choices. One is removal, the other is to wrap it. You can encapsulate it.
yeah, no,
So that's very much like what we're looking at here.
okay. And again, because asbestos is actually a natural element.
It's carcinogenic.
Yeah. No, but it's also found in nature, I believe, isn't it?
Sure.
And so is arsenic. I just didn't know. But because this was dumped, I
Right.
understand the reason to get rid of it. Let me just move on. A lot of this is grant eligible. So of that.
Oh, yes.
And I'd be looking at, I don't want to spend $2.2 million, but I heard from enough neighbors on email that a crosswalk on that street, it's windy, it's on nights like tonight where it's raining and there are leaves, I would not want to be crossing that street. And I would not want to trust a child with a bike to look both ways because cars go very, very fast there. So with that said,
Commissioner, we have a standard in our office that goes beyond PennDOT.
okay.
When we look at something, we say, would you send your 11-year-old to the library on this trail?
Perfect.
And in fact, we applied that when they were telling us, no, we won't build this bridge over Germantown Pike. And we asked, and they said, we got a traffic light there. They can cross the 7 lanes of traffic, with the. And I asked the question, and the engineer looked at it for a minute, and he said, let's build a bridge. It might take 10 years, but let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, and you can look at Route 1 on Roosevelt Boulevard as well. Approximately what percent of that 2.2 million would be grant eligible? I mean, what would the total cost to the township, excusing the arsenic remediation?
Well, in the plan that we were working on, where we showed a grade crossing, we actually looked at, when the township applied for DCNR funding, what they said is we already have DCED, right? We're going to do so much, and what we'll fill in, like mortar in whatever we don't get. Well, now, but then they got $487,000 they didn't even know about a year before. So at this point, for what the budget was, it's almost completely grants. Okay. And the intent on most of the projects that we work on, or colleagues work on like this, or other townships that we work with, the grants often have a matching requirement, but they're set up in such a way, like you can use the Delco money to match DCNR money, to match DCED money, to match PennDOT money. So usually, the vast majority of it is put together with multiple grants.
And just a couple more points. So because that is going to be so close to the high school and you have children running track, I think them not crossing, I think that's a safety issue. Hopefully the school board would, school district and the parents of high school students such as myself would agree. And then the last question is, I guess if we have a culvert and you're going to have to upkeep it and make sure that, I guess there's going to be cars going over it, trucks going over it, and I know that we've had issues of bridges and culverts where, the 18-wheelers or 20, I don't know how many wheels these trucks have. What is the annual upkeep of that? Obviously engineering, but is there other
Well,
structural
let me
upkeep
say,
that would-
the township has a memorandum of understanding with PennDOT for the existing trail. And that memorandum is going to be is in the process of being rewritten to include this extension. There were 7 bridges, or there still are, on the Radnor Trail over, Conestoga Road, et cetera. The agreement is that PennDOT said, look, we're PennDOT, we know how to take care of bridges. So the agreement was that the trail would be operated as part of the Radnor Township Park system with all that maintenance and operations and programming. But PennDOT would do the biannual inspection of the bridges because they still own them. So in this case, the township is getting the funds, and actually we'll have to see how the culvert would be bid out because it really will continue to be part of a PennDOT highway, and PennDOT would normally maintain their own bridges.
And yeah, to my last point, and then that's it. Considering we have a bunch of bridge strikes in the township.
A bunch of what?
Bridge strikes in the township. I think anything that is not a bridge would probably be most agreeable for a lot of us, even though it's going to be high up, but still. So, thank you. You've answered my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to sort of take the pulse, and we're trying to give some direction here. So if I don't, I think I'm just going to run down the row, starting with you, Anna Marie. You've already indicated your preference, but just each person to just kind of let Steve and Bob kind of know where we stand.
I'm all for a culvert. I don't know which option, but of course I would love the more expensive option, but
Thanks. Commissioner Abel?
At this point, I support, because I've heard it a couple times, and correct me if I'm wrong, capping is an acceptable option. So capping, and I still want to give some thought to the options for passing safely. I mean, obviously, I've heard from the neighbors. I understand a tunnel is something that would be of interest, but on the TAP trail, we saw plans for, we didn't see plans for a tunnel on Conestoga, which I think is arguably more dangerous than Radnor Chester and probably gets more traffic. And we've put street grade passings on all of Conestoga crosswalks. So, I'd have to give some more thought, but I would lean toward the street grade crossing if that is a acceptable option.
Thank you.
Say one thing
Yeah,
which
of course.
might help you in your deliberations. The question is, well,
Can you speak into the mic, Bob?
yeah, I'm sorry. I want to say something that would help with the deliberations. What's the difference between the pedestrian scaled culvert and the large scale culvert? Right. The large scale culvert's more expensive by some, but what else is different? Because with the pedestrian scale culvert, we have to have a ramp down from Radnor Chester Road for future construction, which we don't need with the large scaled one. But the other issue is really, from the trail user point of view, you have a grade separated crossing. You go through the culvert. The big impact, aside from the extra dollars for that, what are you getting for that? The big impact of the small culvert is that you're going to have Radnor Chester Road closed for a longer period of time. And the reason for that, again, is that if you take all the time to excavate and build a small culvert, right, you have to build the trail first. So you can't be building, you cut out the road, You bring the trucks in from Enki and whatever, and build that trail. Then you go back and then you build a small culvert. If you build the large culvert first, now you have a way of getting the trucks in, and they can do their construction, right, while traffic is flowing on Radnor Chester Road. That's what that extra $400,000 or so buys you.
May I ask, what is the time differential between
We
the
estimated
small and the large?
that the closure for the large culvert was 3 to 4 months, and for the pedestrian bicycle, 5 to 6.
And Commissioners, if I may add, the large culvert will allow emergency services to traverse the trail. It'll allow public works to traverse the trail, right? So the ambulances, which aren't like the ones in Ghostbusters, they're big box trucks, right? They'll be able to use the large culvert. So there are safety aspects to that, as well as maintenance aspects. Not that they couldn't use the road Bob talked about with the small one, but just as an FYI, emergency services and public works can use the large culvert too.
Yeah, I mean, what did I say, small maintenance vehicles could go through. I mean, if you look at pedestrian scaled culverts on the Chester Valley Trail, there's patrol vehicles, there are maintenance vehicles of, let's say, the size of a Jeep or something. But as Steve said, when you have big boxes, or you have the triaxles, you know, the big dump trucks that you need to get in, or other vehicle cranes, you know, you need the large culvert.
Thank you for highlighting that. And I also want to say for public record that I'm leaning towards capping of the arsenic, as long as if we're not disturbing anything and there's no leakage into the waterways and everything, then I'm for capping.
Thank you. Commissioner Borowski, your turn.
Well, first, Bob, thank you. I know you've been working on this for many, many, many years, so thank you, and for
And people
coming in.
enjoying what's done for many, many years already.
So, you know, I think that we should cap the arsenic. I think we might as well just leave it there. You know, don't disturb it, and let's cap it. I would lean towards the larger culvert. I am concerned about, and I know that you've put a lot of thought and a lot of you know, expertise and whatnot into the at-grade crossing, but I would prefer, I think, to not have people you know, being drawn to the trail and then crossing Radnor Chester Road. Because as much as we want to make it safe and as safe as we could possibly make it, that is a really high traffic road. It has a lot of you know, blind spots. You know, kind of coming over that hill there, it makes me concerned. So
Could not agree more.
I would rather see the larger culvert. I think then that helps us, you know, not only construct that piece of the trail that we are ready to move forward with, but ultimately continuing on with the rest of the trail, because this is only another piece of the longer puzzle, right, to get us down to the Heinz Preserve, correct?
Right. One of the things that we would be doing in going back.
Just a little closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. One of the things we would be doing in going back to the design, there are firms that specialize in culvert construction like this, not just from the point of view of building culverts, but doing it rapidly. You know, where, you know, you're out in some county and this is the only road for 20 miles. You know, or it's like they do a bridge and, you know, they get the Marines they start Friday afternoon at 4, you know, and they work literally day, you know. Now, you can't do a big one like this, but we would look at, in developing the specifications, you know, work with the township and look at, means obviously there's a premium paid to get something done very quickly. So, but again, we'd probably be asking you for other decisions. You know, should we do this more conventionally in terms of how it's being bid, or should we do it with an express operation? And you know, because you can figure out you know, if you saved a month of closure, that can be worth something.
And I apologize if you'll indulge me 1 second, because I didn't get to ask any questions. So just quickly review the thoughts on the financing. So certainly I know you've already received several grants towards this. I know that we put money in.
I haven't, the township has.
Well, I know, but you guys have worked on them, and the township. And we put money in the 2019 general obligation bond, correct, to also help with this project. What else, like, So do you think we can completely cover the cost right now of what is estimated around, a little over $2 million for the larger culvert through additional grants and get it done that way?
That would be the strategy. I mean, I think what helped was when Radnor applied to DCNR, they said that the townships in the application said, we, the township, will provide them, whatever matching money is missing, we will fill that in. But from that day forward, we were told, keep looking for grants, and we did, and we got a lot of it. So I think the intention here would be, well, the other thing too is that we're not, if we're not going ahead, well, right now we're talking about updating drawings and so forth. So we're not ready to go out for grant applications right now. You have to have your plans done and everything else. In a couple months, we would, the next DCNR round. So then the question would be to look at, what can you get? What do we have? But I've always seen the intent is to get as much, if not all.
And because this is a part of the circuit trail, it makes it very attractive for grants as well, correct? Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if I could just add, and maybe this will help you with your choice, I don't know, and not to add to the presentation, but when you look at whatever method you choose for arsenic mitigation and or the at-grade crossing, let's say you went with the more expensive large. So this isn't a one-year deal, right? Let's look at it over 50 years. So that's what we're looking at. So there is a lot more money to possibly be spent, but that trail is going to be there for decades to come, including that possible culvert.
Thank you for that. So I'm hearing people are leaning towards the culverts. I like that idea. The grade crossing does concern me just because it may not be the most dangerous crossing in our community, but anytime you're putting people on bicycles, maybe going at a speed and that sort of thing across the road, we should be cautious.
Well, I think there's another factor too, and that is when the Philadelphia and Western Railroad was constructed, right, from 69th Street to Stratford, and then extended to Norristown a few years later, it was built, it was amazing. They were building a railroad to compete with the Pennsylvania Railroad. I mean, so, it's like you competing with Elon Musk with his startup. And one of the things, they did a number of really amazing things. But one was they made it electrified. They were electrified before the Paoli line, right? And they electrified it, and they made it a third rail operation, right, which is still there. So what they did is they eliminated all grade crossings. That was done both as a safety issue, but also as a speed issue. Now, as a result, I mean, many of the trails I've worked on, there's a grade crossing here, there's a grade crossing there. So the Schuylkill River Trail, you'd have to go through and eliminate dozens of them, because it's on a riverbank. The Chester Valley Trail was an old single track going through farmland, one grade crossing after another in many places. This case, this trail is completely grade separated right now. So, part of your argument could also be, we want to maintain that standard of safety. We're blessed with a higher standard of safety because of the way the railroad was built. Let's not compromise that.
You make a good point. I don't want to discount the bridge. I might be the only one up here who thinks that a bridge would be an interesting way to go. So I like the culvert idea. Probably if pressed, that would be my preference. But a question about the bridge is sort of how deep does it have to go into the trail in order to have a grading that is manageable by
hundreds of feet.
Hundreds?
Hundreds and hundreds of feet. You'd have a massive ramping system. You'd have a big tinker toy thing above the road, because you'd have to have at least a 17-foot clearance, right? And then you need, 1 inch per foot for ADA with a resting area of 5 feet every 30 feet. It would be massive. And I think that would be, I have to say, as a preservation architect and someone who's very concerned about, historic landscapes, that would be a big element. In terms of meeting the Secretary of Interior standards, it'd be tough. And honestly, getting approvals. because of its impact, its visual impact.
So you don't think that's really a viable option? So we're sort of down to the 3.
Well, and it's
I mean,
also,
anything
it's
can
also,
be
it's
done.
also not for another reason, for walking, biking, and the average citizen. You're creating a hill, right? The original rail bed ran underneath Radnor Chester Road. That got filled in, right? So now you're starting down at that rail bed. You have to climb up to the road level. Then you have to climb up another 20 feet to get over the road. Honestly,
It's awfully fun going
my
down,
wife would
isn't
shoot me. You know,
Fun ride on the other side.
well,
Coming down would be a lot
the
more
other
fun
thing
than
that
going up.
happens when you do that, right? It's like you go to a train station on the main line, right? And they have I'm trying to think of like Orland has it, where you're one side, you want to go to the other side. There's no pedestrian subway. So there's a stairway that goes up, it goes over, and comes down. And what do you find? People have pulled apart the fence. They don't want to go up, over, and down, right? Look, we all try to take shortcuts if we can. So the thing that you wouldn't want to do is to build something that didn't get used or encourage people to avoid it to save time.
I appreciate that point. Still don't want to discount the bridge, but I would lean towards Culvert. So you're up, Commissioner Larkin.
Sort of contradictorily, I would say on the one hand, let's actually remediate the arsenic instead of capping it. There's going to be a stormwater event, or there's going to be a car crash, there's going to be something, and the cap that's on top of the arsenic is going to be damaged, and we're going to have to replace it, or the arsenic isn't going to be in the place where we think it is, and it's going to leach out, and it's going to go elsewhere. We don't run into those issues. Or just, in the future, we're going to want to do something else with this, and the arsenic is still going to be there. If we take care of it now, we won't run into those problems in the future.
It's an extra $500,000, and but the other thing, just to think about, is that what I mentioned about not disturbing the rail bed, right? Core samples were taken, they were analyzed and so forth. You start digging things up, that's when you'd find unknowns. And if the arsenic, and the method of protection, it works well, that would be important. And the other thing, as I said, is we have something that was designed extremely well by the railroad. We start excavating 5 or 6 feet. Now we've changed the drainage. We have, a cut that has more runoff and erosion. There's just a tremendous amount of other things that could come out of that. I totally understand what you're saying about let's just, get it done once and for all, get it certified and be done with it. But I think you have to, I'll check on the costs of what it takes to manage.
I understand the cost concerns you raise. I think that they're well taken, or at least I take them well. I work on a lot of projects where I end up seeing something that somebody else either capped off or just didn't address from decades before, and then the next guy didn't know what was there and disturbs what was there,
Right.
or found out about it, and it's because there's leachate all over the place. And then we have to bring in the bacteria to chew through it or whatever it is on a project-specific basis. So my preference would be to take care of it. And like I said, sort of contradictorily, I am concerned that we are talking about spending what will be, particularly if we do my thing with the remediation, upwards of $2 or $3 million in what sounds like it's going to be a 3/10 of a mile extension to an existing trail. I love trails. I want to see this one extended, but my pick in terms of culvert or bridge is whatever we can get the most grant funds for.
Okay.
Commissioner Farhi?
Sure. So I know that capping works. I know that in Havertown by the YMCA, that's pretty much a super fun site, and they've capped that, and it's probably good for 100 years, my guess.
Whatever, yeah.
Whatever, the PVC or whatever they cap it with. If to your point, Jack, we've been going on, this has been like this for years, and we've had plenty of stormwater issues, and I don't think any of that arsenic has leached anywhere. As far as, I could go with capping, because it's more cost efficient. And then the other one, I would actually go for the larger culvert, the 2.2 million. And if you're going to do it, let's do it once, let's do it right, and then that's it. As opposed to, Not to say that, $400,000 or $500,000 isn't a lot of money, but we're going to have this for years and years and years. So I think if you amortize it over the life of the trail, which is pretty much in perpetuity, granted, not all culverts will last that long, but I would be, just for safety purposes, for everything that the engineer said, to go with the larger culvert.
Right, and this is not something that's being done just for a 0.3 of a mile trail extension. Right. This is part of, what's been said is, hey, we'll take a look at crossing the Blue Route. I mean, the thing that was really outrageous, I have to tell you, when we worked on the original study, the Blue Route hadn't been built yet, right? And when the Route 202 expressway was built, they put culverts in that were there for 15 or 20 years before the Chester Valley Trail came along. But they looked ahead, and I have to say, there were objections in the township. We don't want the culverts there. I don't know, it'll bring drunken Villanova students or whatever it was. So it was a shame, because they could have put them in at the time, right on the rail bed, and been done with it. So
One more thing, culverts are better for wildlife as well. So that's another important factor I think we're overlooking.
yeah, there are deer tunnels and other things already on the Blue Route, as you know. Yep. So that's another thing that obviously gets looked at in the design. We have to look at all the impacts, so that the larger culvert is nicer from that point of view as well, no question.
Commissioner Myers?
Thanks. Thank you. It was a great presentation. I think I'm for capping. I don't like the idea of disturbing that nicely packed rail bed, and I think that if it's not the whole thing, you're not talking about much distance. It's not the whole 0.3 miles. So I think that's where I settle on that. One quick question. Originally, when the train was there, Radnor Chester Road was there, was it a bridge?
Yes.
And why not do that?
Why not what?
Put a bridge back under Radnor Chester Road. Seems to me that if you're going to close the road, you just crack it through, move your giant work machines in, get rid of all that dirt, and build a bridge.
Well, it's PennDOT's road.
Yeah, well,
Right.
PennDOT likes to take care of bridges.
Well, I think what they feel is that in terms of putting in something that doesn't have to be replaced periodically, a culvert is a very appropriate approach. It's all
It's
concrete.
good enough.
I mean, putting in a cheap steel bridge, which is what a lot of them are.
And there's no remnant of that bridge in there anywhere?
We've never found anything.
So they didn't just fill underneath it? Because it would seem to me,
No, remember, it was a bridge that was built in 1906. We have photographs of it with the station. This is the stairways coming down from Radnor Chester Road. It's a very, well, by today's standard, it would be a flimsy bridge. The loads that you had to carry in 1906.
and it's a high-traffic
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
All right. Then I would be for the large culvert. I think the crossing is scary.
Okay, well, thank you to all the commissioners. I think it might be a little hazy, but I think perhaps Mr. Nursini has a little bit better direction.
Yeah, Commissioner, so in order for Bob Thomas to give us a proposal, really requesting that the board, if it is culvert, I need to know large or small, and in mitigation, it's cap or remove. Because otherwise, we're going to have a lot of options in his proposal when it gets back to you. So at one point in time, you're going to have to choose, respectfully said.
Thank you for pressing us. I'm going to summarize what I think I heard as the majority of people speaking, that we're looking at cap and we're looking at a big culvert. If anybody has a strong difference, the way I was listening and hearing my colleagues, please say so, even if it was not your preference. I think that's what we heard. Nobody seems to be.
Thank you, Madam President. That's all we
debating
need.
that. Okay.
I'd say there's a third thing,
What's
which
that?
is doable. We'll sharpen our grant writing pencils.
We
I'm
are
serious.
going to collaborate deeply with you on that one.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This was
All right.
a really great
Thank
presentation.
you for all the time and
Of
and
course.
really good thinking. It's much appreciated. So, Steve, we'll be in touch.
Very good, sir.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, well, that was a fruitful conversation, and we're moving to the Darby Paoli Road Trail update.
So Commissioner, before you tonight, we have Michelle Adams, President, owner of Meliora Design. And this too this trail began long before a lot of the current sitting commissioners were there. So Mrs. Adams is going to give you an update of where the trail goes, today's costs, which are very different than the costs when we first came up, status, where we stand, and I'll let Michelle take it from there.
Great. Thank you, Steve, and thank you for a chance to present this to you tonight. So this began back in 2017, and the original concept was designed by Natural Lands, and the idea was to connect from the Willows area through the Skunk Hollow area where the Township composting facility is, running essentially parallel to Darby Paoli Road and ending up in the Sawmill Park area. And that was the original concept, and this plan is oriented north, true north. The ones I'm going to show you are slightly skewed over. So that's where it was in 2017. So here's where it is now, and it's divided into 3 main segments of paved trail and a couple grass-paved loops. So you have section 1, which is the Godfrey Road to Sawmill Road. That's where the cows are right now, and the Sawmill Park area. Then the section 2 goes through what's referred to as that's the area where there's the compost facility for the township vehicles crossing the road in there, and the township sewer improvements went in there a couple years ago when the sewer line broke on Little Darby Creek. And then section 3 is the paved trail that takes you along Darby Paoli Trail up to the Willows, and you can see it starts to get a little wavy there, and that's because there's topography coming up the hill to the Willows. There's a total of 1.3 miles of paved trail and about 1.7 miles of soft trails, mowed trails. 2 bridges, several culvert crossings, an extension, and we'll look at each of those sections individually. And those are the areas that would be the mowed trails, so they're pretty just simple, something the township would mow and take care of. The first area, the Sawmill Park area, you can see that this is about 2,200 feet of paved trail. It includes a new bridge over Little Darby Creek, the Sawmill Road Bridge. Would be a new parking lot in the vicinity of the barn right there off of Darby Paoli Road. There's an area of a small stream and some wetlands. Those would be crossed with a boardwalk type trail in that area. And the estimated cost for this section would be about $1.21 million. These costs were actually done in detail in 2019, and they've been updated to 2024 based on escalation values. The Skunk Hollow area, you can see this area is a little more tricky. It's coming through a lot of wooded areas. It's got a culvert extension. Right now, in that second photo at the bottom, you can see that's the existing bridge that comes in that the Public Works facilities use to get to the compost area. And people use that bridge to get to the parking area that's shown in the far left. There's an unimproved gravel parking area there. So rather than have the trail cross on the bridge, that culvert would be extended next to the bridge, so you'd separate the pedestrians and the bikes from any traffic on that road as it comes over that bridge. And there's a new bridge, the Skunk Hollow Bridge, in this area as well. This is one of the more challenging areas in terms of trees and environmental features. Then the third section, and 3 and 4, is the area that takes you up to the Willows, and the smaller section 4 there is a paved section that brings you down to the intersection where there would be an improved crossing to get you over to a mowed path across the street, the Ryefield path, number 7 there. Number 6 and 7 would be mowed paths, 3 and 4 are paved paths. And this section had an estimated cost of $2 million in 2024 estimated cost. So summing this all up, back on the general photo, we've got about 7,000 feet of paved paths, 9,000 feet of mowed paths, and Where we stand now, the engineering plans have been complete. The permitting has not been completed, so there would be revisions to those plans based on permitting comments, but the engineering plans are complete. There's about 110 engineering sheets of the drawings, which I won't share with you tonight. And we need to do the infiltration testing for the stormwater. It's been scheduled and rescheduled a couple times in coordination with the farmer, so that needs to happen. Cost and potential funding sources, as Mr. Thomas mentioned, this would be eligible for a variety of grants, and that would be the way to pursue funding for this. The township paid for the original design of this trail, and as Mr. Thomas mentioned, you can match one grant to another as you start to show your required matches in the grants. There would be some updating of PennDOT standards if certain PennDOT grants are granted, but that would be an unknown until you acquire those grants. Next steps, the township needs to do some internal review with the Shade Tree Committee, especially in the Skunk Hollow area where there's some tree impacts, and have the input of the Parks and Recreation Board. And then, as I mentioned, the permitting. It would require DEP permitting, the Delaware County Conservation District, and PennDOT highway occupancy permits. And that's our summary tonight. I'm glad to ask any questions. And this one's been around, but it's at a place where it could start to seek funding.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
So I have about 7 million questions, but I don't know that I'll bore everyone with it tonight. So I think it's something that I could probably take offline, and would love to have, I think, a public meeting, maybe with the residents in the area, to talk about this. I guess my main question, and I don't know who wants to field this, is, so is the plan to try to do this all at once? Is it to try to chunk it? And I guess, I don't know if some of this is because almost on a weekly basis I'm forwarding some sort of grant information that we could perhaps apply for to get this started. Is there a way to maybe do a piece of it, at least like get it started? I think one of the things that, this trail system was a promise of was that people would be able to access the land that the township purchased and preserved as open space. Yeah. And that was something that had been talked about back when this happened, and these trails provide that access. So if we were going to try to do it in a way that it was, I guess, cost effective, or we could at least start to plan out. And is that the idea, that we start to plan out? Like, we're not going to say, we're going to do it all in one fell swoop and we're going to try to get every single grant, or do we try to do it in little pieces? So I don't know who wants to answer that one.
So, Commissioner, I guess yes to all above, right? So there are some hurdles with this trail from a grant standpoint. There's no connectivity to other trails. I think it's a great concept, and I will be thrilled if we can build it. I think it'll be heavily used when we do, or it will be well used. But from that grant standpoint, it's not like the TAP Trail or the Radner Trail that Bob Thomas was talking about that has all these connections. I think it has great merit in that the township owns from the Willows almost to Godfrey, and it will open that up to folks other than just the Skunk Hollow trails. So what we could do is both. So we could pick one of the segments that maybe has the most, checks most of the boxes for a grant and go for that. Because at $5 million, we're not going to get, millions of dollars from one grant, right? It's going to be like Bob, we were talking about, grant after grant after grant. So we would try both. If there's a grant that comes up that we feel, would get with Michelle, and if we think that a segment checks the most boxes, that's what we would go for. If there's a larger one we can go for, that's great too. But we do have to go through, I think before we get to that point, we definitely need to speak to Shade Tree, meet with them, and we definitely need to go to Park and Rec, because that can, that may in some ways change the plan. So we need to finalize that, and along with the infiltration testing, before we can wrap up the plans and then start to apply for grants.
So that's definitely my other question. Certainly, yes, the Shade Tree. And you know, is even all this still, you know, viable if we all still want to do this? I know this is, you know, an older plan. You know, I guess the one thing I always thought would be the easiest is to go the area where we did the Skunk Hollow, the trunk line work, and go through there. But now you say, you know, there's certainly, I guess, DEP and other things we need to go through, shade tree and all those considerations. So, you know, are all these pieces still viable? But I guess those are conversations. We can bring that to our, you know, shade tree experts. We can bring that to Parks and Rec. I'd also would like to engage the residents on this as well. It's been a long time since we've seen these plans. Actually, honestly, this is like the first time I've really seen it in full. I will say that the presentation, I don't know if it's just me, but the presentation that's in our packet, it's not what you were showing up here. Like, actually, there's a couple of the slides are repeated, I think, several times. So if we could get this presentation that you just shared, Michelle, that would be great.
So this will be the one that Mrs. Hagan can post, right?
I'm sorry?
We'll have Mrs. Hagan post this one. I didn't realize there was one. This is the final presentation.
Oh, but mine has like the same slide a couple times, unless it's just me being stupid.
I think there are different things were highlighted. It was like each trail per slide.
Right.
Okay.
But there, you know, there are a lot of consistencies on each side.
Right.
Yeah,
That was
but-
an earlier version.
Okay, gotcha. All right, good. Okay. So that would be great to have as well. So, thanks.
Any other discussion? I'm sorry, Maggie?
I had a question, but Lisa already had.
Excellent. Mr. Orsini, anything you need us to?
So we'll move forward, and we'll set up to go to those different committees or boards. We'll work with Commissioner Browski for a town hall meeting. Request that we do that as we get a little further along in design, and then we can move forward from there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
This is the last item on our regular agenda, and then we will be moving into some budget presentations. So Resolution 2022-128, authorizing the award of construction contract B22006 for the East Lancaster Avenue pedestrian improvements from Barley Cone Lane to Garrett Avenue project to Marino Corporation to include contingency and construction inspection and administration in the total amount of $892,761.60 to be funded from the proceeds of the 2019 general obligation bond. May I hear a motion, please? And a second.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Norsini?
So we're respectfully requesting this project be awarded. It's been in design and permitting for some time. It's a very good pedestrian project for a heavily used sidewalk to make it safer along Lancaster Avenue.
And do we have any commissioner comment?
Yeah, just first of all, thank you. I know I've walked that area with you, Steve, Bill, years ago. So you were able to get all the easements, or?
Correct. We're able to move forward with the project.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think it's welcome. There are a lot of stakeholders. The majority stakeholders, I feel, are the Villanova students. So there's no grade on the sidewalk. So lifting that up, I think, will make it safer for everybody, especially those students who are the primary stakeholders. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other commissioner comment? And is there any public comment? I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Passes with Anna Marie Jones off the dais. Thank you. That is the end of our business agenda, but tonight we have a budget presentation, and we get to hear from our department heads. To start with, I'm not sure who's up first. Looks like we've got Kevin coming up. Thank you.
Madam President, if I could, while Kevin's getting the presentation loaded up, I just I just wanted to thank the commissioners for allowing this to be part of tonight's agenda, to give the departments an opportunity to talk about what it is that they do every single day. I'm always blown away when I hear these presentations, so hopefully there's some positive takeaways, but I do appreciate the commissioners' time tonight to allow this to happen.
Mr. Kachansky, it's all you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Good evening, Commissioners. Kevin Kachansky with the Community Development Department 2023 budget presentation. Community Development Department's mission is to serve our residents and businesses of Radnor Township through the administration and enforcement of our regulatory ordinances. We do this to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of our residents and businesses, to provide efficient and courteous service, and to dedicate, and we're dedicated to maintaining a safe and welcoming environment. The department saw some changes in 2022. First and foremost, Delaware County Health Department commenced operations in April that took all the licensing for food establishments and for commercial pool inspections, as well as those inspections down to the county level. So we're no longer in control of those features. We also had the fire safety inspection program that was approved as part of the 2022 budget. That position was filled at the end of August, and we're hoping to start formal inspections before the end of this year. We also started the comprehensive plan update. That's been something that's been in front of this board for several years. It was funded as part of the 2022 budget. The consultant, Michael Baker, was selected back at the end of spring, beginning of summer. They've started their initial groundwork, and we are in the process of starting to form the steering committee for that. This is our organizational chart. Currently, we have 5 full-time in-house employees, 1 part-time property maintenance inspector, and 1 part-time administrative assistant. That part-time administrative assistant position is not filled. We also utilize the services of a third-party consulting firm to help on the building side of the house. We have 2 full-time code officials and 1 part-time rental housing inspector. It's important to note in our org chart, it's actually flipped for the code officials. We're authorized 2 in-house and 1 third party. Right now we have the 2 third parties, so we're always looking at opportunities to revert that back to give us a little bit more flexibility with staffing needs with some of the other requirements of the department. Administrative responsibilities, they process the permits, rental housing licenses, applications, renewals, and payments, contractors' licenses and insurance information, as well as processing all of the applications and submittals for zoning hearing board, our design review board, and our historical and architectural review board. Get those packages prepared and out to the board members in a timely fashion. Prepare monthly reports to the County Board of Assessments for taxes, process departmental right to know requests, and schedule all the building inspections for the code officials. This is a little snapshot of the permit activity for the department for all of 2021, and then a comparison for the first 9 months of 2021 as compared to 2022. You'll see that the activity in 22 was a little less brisk than it was in 21, but that was really kind of a caveat of COVID. When COVID hit in 2020, all construction activity kind of came to a little bit of a grinding halt. So then we saw a huge uptick in 2021 for people trying to get those projects started again. And this is evident when we look at the first 9 months dating back to 2014. You can see that, traditionally activity is in the 1,900 to 2,000 range. You saw that huge drop off in 2020 during COVID, that huge spike in 21 post-COVID, and then we're kind of tailing back into our natural groove with that. Code inspections, again, our 3 code officials, they do the plan review and issue the permits, perform all the building-related inspections, hold regular meetings with architects, builders, residents, and staff. They respond to complaints, and they support and respond to emergency situations 24/7. They've processed just under 1,800 building permits so far this year, performed over 1,900 building inspections, responded to 196 complaints, and currently we have over 3,300 open permits that have been applied since January 1st, 2020. Some imaging of what these guys are doing out in the field. First picture on the left is a sewer lateral inspection. Middle picture is the SEER building construction over at Villanova, a pretty massive project. Picture on the right is one of the new dwellings over at Ardrossan. Again, we respond to property maintenance complaints. Here we had a dumpster that was overflowing and blowing trash into the neighborhoods. House fire that staff responded to in the early morning hours. and then some sidewalk obstructions with vegetation blocking clear egress, clearly a safety issue. One of the other components of the department is our rental housing. This stays pretty static year over year. We see some units come in, some units go. One of the things that is more static is the student rentals. We have not had a new student rental in the last 10 years. We actually lost 2 student rentals between last year and this year. They went to owner occupied. People bought them and then fixed them up and moved them in. And that concludes the community development presentation. I want to thank on behalf of the department, the board, township manager, and the other directors for allowing us to serve this great community.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I am going to ask you to field any questions that might come from the commissioners before I let you sit down. I know that we're trying to keep these presentations tight and short. There might even be a competition going on.
As long as this doesn't count against my time.
This does not count against your time. Can we put that rule, that the question and answer period is on the commissioners, not on the department
Absolutely.
head? So if anybody has any questions for Mr. Kachansky, now is your time.
No? Great, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Brett.
much.
Good evening, Commissioners. So we're going to talk about the engineering department briefly. So what do? Land development, permitting, capital projects, and engineering services for other departments. We'll talk a little bit about each one. So land development, what we call SALDO, subdivision and land development. Our department, through our consultant, reviews all the applications under the zoning ordinance, the SALDO ordinance, and the stormwater management ordinance. We process the applications, resident notification letters. We are the liaison to the Radnor Township Planning Commission, and for SALDO, the Delaware County Planning Commission. Permitting. So we've had 690 year to date. As you can see, the lion's share is the highway permits, transfer of real estate, but when you add up the minor grading, and stormwater, which are all grading permits, there's about 140 of them. So they're actually probably the most time-consuming permits that we do process. Capital projects. So this is a real large portion of what we do. So if you look at the different bubbles, we have 11 projects in various stages of construction, whether it be close out, finish up, or dead in the middle. And that's worth about $14 million. And some of those that you might be of note are the South Wayne Stormwater Management Project, the Robin Hood Road project that's just finishing up. The one that's just getting ready to start is King of Prussia, Eagle, and Pine Tree. And that's just to name a few. Brookside, which you saw for the change order. We've done some sidewalk projects, and we have 12 projects in design and permitting, and 2 projects bidding, one being the Strathmore project that we just talked about. So I can tell you, I don't know any township anywhere that has this many projects in the queue in one way or the other. It's akin to that of a small city, to be perfectly honest. I have to thank our GIS coordinator, Dave Kelly, for this map. So this shows you the various projects that are going on, and they're color-coded. I don't know why I lost the chart, but basically what you're looking at is projects in design, in construction. So they're all over the township. Obviously, the stormwater projects are more focused along streamways and creeks, but that gives you an idea of what's going on with our department as far as these capital projects. Again, thanks to Dave Kelly. Other services. Obviously, like all the other departments, we respond to resident concerns. We assist residents in completing their permits. They call us. It's a little tough for some of them, and Trish Sherwin will walk them through. We are the liaison of the utility companies. We're the liaison to PennDOT as well as DEP. And that's just to name a few. So who does all this work? It's a lot of work. Well, it's our team. And this is our team. So that's Doug Meter, top left. He's our engineering inspector. He's out in the field every day. Dennis Capella is our engineering PM.
very solid contributor. You know Ben, he's been before you before. He's our staff engineer, and he's coming along very well, taking on more responsibility every day. And top right is Trish Sherwin, who basically keeps all of us in line and makes sure things move along. She's invaluable, as is the whole team. So really what it comes down to is we are a team who gets this done internally and with the use of our consultants. Our team is part of a league with all these other teams that are sitting here, and we are very proud to serve you, the manager, the residents, and our fellow staff here at the Township.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Norsini? Excellent. Thanks. Who's up? Hot tape.
Commissioners, thank you for your time tonight. We'll talk about Finance Department. When you talk accounting and finance, most people, what comes to mind is, well, money. However, we all know that in finance, it's not just about the money or just about the debits and credits. While we do spend a great deal of time posting, reconciling, balancing, budgeting, and accounting for thousands of transactions, it comes down to service. Who are our customers? Our department proudly services and actively engages with a diverse consumer base. Residents, business owners, contractors and vendors, professionals, our community service organizations, government agencies, boards and commissions, and all of our active and retired employees. So how do we do this? Our finance team is made up of 9 full-time and 5 part-time professionals administering the following functions of Radnor Township. By the way, in the aggregate, the municipal government experience of this entire group is just over 250 years, most of those years earned here in Radnor Township. The functions we administer can be broken down as follows: accounting and financial reporting, payroll and HR, administrative services, information technology, and our business tax administration. I want to take a look at first accounting and financial reporting. We'll look at some of the functions and then the relationships. What are the people we service? Who do we engage with? What are the touch points for this group? Led by Amy Lacey, our Assistant Finance Director, supported by Ben on the revenue side, Jeanette on the expense side, and Mrs. McDevitt for cash management and general ledger accounting. This is truly the workhorse of our department. This is where the bulk of the transactions occur on a daily basis: cash, investments, revenue, and expenses, all handled through this small group: treasury and investments, accounts payable, escrow funds, debt service, all the real estate and utility collections that go on. That involves working with 8,000 households, managing over 18,000 accounts between taxes, sewer, and stormwater, over 400 development escrow accounts, across 22 funds, 30 bank accounts, and managing relationships with our banks, outside professionals, and our committees and regulatory agencies and all departments. When we talk payroll and human resources, it's one-stop shopping, all done by Mary Lou, one person who does soup to nuts service, from new hire, onboarding and processing, payroll administration and tax filing, benefits and workers' compensation management, our collective bargaining agreements, pension and OPEB administration, and switchboard operations, overseen by Mary Lou. That's Yvonne and Mary, the friendly voice on the phone when you call in. Again, those relationships span all of our employees, present, retired, part-time, working with our insurance providers on health care and workers' compensation, our outside consultants, state auditors, and federal reporting agencies as well. Administrative services. This is kind of a catch-all category, and Melissa Kahn spearheads this and probably wears the most diverse hat of anybody I know, overseeing the functions of contracts, bids, and RFPs, our internal ERP system administration and project management. She leads our sustainability efforts, responsible for grants management from application to reporting and compliance, our right to know and compliance with Sunshine Act and records retention. And again, Melissa touches all departments, works with bidders and contractors, our EAC, FEMA, PEMA, state and local agencies, and all interested parties seeking public information. As a side note, since 2018, Melissa has applied for 37 grants, just shy of $13 million, and we've been awarded to date just shy of $4 million in those grants, and while others are still in process. In addition, with Right to Know, in the past 2 years, Melissa coordinates and quarterbacks fulfilling over 1,800 Right to Know requests on an annual basis. That number has more than tripled since 2018 and 2019. IT, this is the backbone of our data and communications, led by Bob Hale and supported by Stevie G, managing our server and all of our network administration, emails, phones, copiers, all equipment, police specialized equipment, as well as our building security and mechanicals, and our cell tower and antenna leases. Again, those relationships, those touch points involve all departments and staff, all outside third-party vendors and communications. And added to IT this year is our GIS efforts, brand new in -- more to come on that in the future. Act 511 Business Tax Administration. Michelle, for the past year and a half, with support from Ruth, has done a tremendous job in providing personalized attention to our business tax base with demonstrated results in compliance and collections, interacting with over 2,200 businesses, our business tax professionals, CARFAC, and all other interested parties who want to do business in Radnor Township. Always keeping an eye on maintaining uniformity in the administration, enforcement, and compliance. So, it's not all about the money, it's about the team. And with your support and the manager's continued support of our people, our systems, our infrastructure, and our security, we have the necessary resources, controls, and procedures in place to effectively manage, account for, and report on all of Radnor's transactions, assets, and activities in excess of $100 million across multiple funds and accounts and investments and debt proceeds on a monthly basis. The proof is in the pudding. In 2008, it was a dark year for Radnor in terms of financial statement reporting, with 34 management comments from our independent CPA, reduced to 1 in 2015 and 16, and 0 since 2017. We continue to receive unqualified audit opinions from our independent CPA. Been awarded the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award from GFOA for 23 of the last 26 years. With your support, we strive to maintain compliance with our fund balance policy, and all this works together to continue to maintain a Moody's credit rating of a AA1. Thanks for your time tonight. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Does anybody have any questions for Bob? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for giving staff the opportunity to share a little bit about our work. This summer marked 3 years since we opened the Public Information Office, and it has been a whirlwind of activity in a very short time. For 2022, we focused on publicizing the website and the new app launches and creating brand awareness and consistent brand usage. We launched a Department Spotlight campaign to give our stakeholders the chance to get to know some of the faces behind the scenes here at the Township. And through that process, we realized video engagement is a key leader in our marketing efforts. We then developed a social media spot called #AroundTownThursday to provide a weekly forecast of newsworthy items to the community. To share with you a day in the life as the PIO here in Radnor, it's our goal to create and maintain an effective communication system that serves our community. 50% of the time, I am focused on internal and external communication, working directly with the department heads to learn about programs, projects, and events so we can provide our stakeholders with accurate, timely, and consistent information. 30% of the time is dedicated to developing awareness campaigns to inform and educate our community about particularly newsworthy items and to highlight Radnor as one of the best places to live, work, and visit on the main line. 20% of the time is dedicated to website updates and enhancements. As of winter 2022, our site is now a mobile-first platform designed to help visitors complete tasks and find what they need quickly. I'm lucky to have the daily support of Ian Myers, who is often behind the scenes. However, his technical knowledge is critical to delivering the final product to our community and for managing the technology in our meeting rooms like this one. We have formalized our media relations, including a press office that regularly holds press conferences, as we saw with the Battle of the Badges blood drive, the South Wayne Stormwater Project groundbreaking, Chief for a Day, and regular press engagements for newsworthy happenings. We have established a social media presence that generates campaigns which cross-promote the township services and offerings. We launched and currently manage 2 apps, including the Radnor Connect 411 app and also the Code Red, the urgent communication platform. We have increased stakeholder communication with the hashtag Around Town Thursday campaign, department spotlights, and the roundtable discussion with community partners and township leadership. I'd like to share some analytics that describe the impact of our rebranding efforts and website redesign. Year to date, our platform engagement across the board is significantly higher than before. This year, Instagram is by far the leading platform for us in terms of followers and engagement. However, it should be noted that Facebook reach is up 500%, and that's because we started with a very small following of 100 people this time last year. LinkedIn has been a great success for us because we're capturing the business community who may live in Radnor and work in the city or vice versa. So that's been a very interesting exercise. It also provides a very different demographic than our other platforms that retain an audience of mainly 75% women between the ages of 35 and 55. With these varied platforms, we have diversified our audience and it has been a successful approach. It's important to note we do not engage in paid advertising. This is all organic growth. Next is a snapshot of how our Granicus email and text messaging system called GovDelivery is performing since we launched nearly a year ago. We started with 3,500 subscribers and we've grown to 9,000 subscribers in 9 months. Those subscribers generally select 10 topics each. So we have a topic subscription of nearly 100,000. This means folks who are receiving our communications are actually opening them and engaging with them. The highest performing topics are the Parks and Rec weekly newsletter, the Township weekly newsletter, and the news flash items that come out many times a day are nearly tied with the Township event communications. In closing, 2022 was a big year for product launching and new engagement campaigns. It was also a great year to measure analytics and what messaging techniques and topics are of most interest to our community. With all of this fresh data in hand, our game plan for 2023 is to increase video engagement, particularly on social media, to continually expand promotion of department-specific projects, events, services, and offerings. We also want to increase the roundtable and partnerships with community partners. We have had great success with folks like Radnor Conservancy and the Green Team. We also want to spotlight staff members' expertise to enhance the relationship between our stakeholders and our staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. White, and most importantly, the Radnor community. I'm pleased to give you a brief overview of the Radnor Police Department. On behalf of all the phenomenal women and men of the Radnor Police Department, we are truly honored to serve this great community. There's not a day that doesn't go by that we try and reevaluate services and prompt response. Our mission statement is listed on this front slide, and as you can see, we were able to get a picture in COVID without wearing any masks that kind of gave a snapshot of what we look like in every different age group, shape, and size. So we're very happy with our team. I'm going to get right into the foundation. Kind of took it, if you think about a hand or 5 specific things, it's hard to pick up something unless all the functions are working. So it's so important to be a team. And I'd like to go into our team just a little bit. Our administrative team, which is comprised of our executive assistants, administrative staff, and lieutenants, oversee the daily operations of the police department. Each day we meet, we stagger arrival times, so there's a command staff member here during all business hours and our busy times. Very important, we attend community meetings. We assure staffing at all extra police functions. Very important unit, the Integrity Control Unit, answers directly to the command staff. They handle any police concerns or conduct complaints. We partner with all the township schools to increase school safety, and that, as you know, is one of our top missions every day, but it is a heightened awareness right now. We also work the service window, which is a busy window with people having accidents, needing police reports and other things. And we also handle a phenomenal amount of right-to-know requests, more than we ever kind of imagined. So our team works quite a bit on those efforts. The next is the patrol unit, and as you can see, our numbers are listed there for those officers. This is the backbone of what we do. This is so critically important that these frontline officers respond to 911 calls, engage our community. They do that through daily walkthroughs of our public and private schools. All the Radnor schools, any one of them, we attempt to visit every day based on call volume. They attend many, many community events and public education seminars. They team up with them, such as Reading in the Park. We'll always bring patrol officers so that the community meets the people on the street. We do vacant house checks, which is a very staple thing. It's sort of old school policing. The next 2 things, vacant house check, we go and we check your property when you're away so that you can rest assured that we're on top of something. And actually, we found some burglaries, and really we've actually found more property maintenance issues, pipes run or pipes broken, other little things. So it is a really neat service that we provide, and I'm very proud of it. We also do old school business checks. We walk various stores, the Wayne Block during Christmas time. We check all the stores throughout the township, commercial properties, as they are often, a highlight of somebody trying to enter them. So the patrol division is going on, and I have to stress to the community, they're working every holiday. They're working in the middle of the night, in the snowstorms and everything else. So we are very proud of them. Our detective unit, very important, highly trained, very disciplined group of officers. These detectives conduct criminal investigations. They really dial in. There's long-term investigations. Some of them take years. Some of them are always ongoing. You see the paperwork that they handle. We process all the information, and then the lieutenants will determine what detectives jump on and how we assign it, and also how we break them up. Some cases are a little bit easier than others. Others, you can imagine, are very difficult. What I think is also neat about the detective unit is they're very well versed in different types of crime. Since we're not big enough to have special units, we share an even workload, so it keeps our people sharp. So I just wanted to share that with you. Very important part of detective follow-up is victim assistant and advocate liaison. This advocacy really helps people when they've had a traumatic experience. Could be simply just financial, but that's still a major impact. And then obviously people who are injured, and they help follow up, make sure they get reimbursed. We do background investigations for the township and soliciting permits, which we're quite busy with that. We maintain the evidence room, which is an extremely important function of the police department. There's weapons, there's narcotics, and there's all types of valuable property in there. Cyber forensic investigations, as you can imagine, this field just is constantly growing. We have to stay cutting edge on that. And processing of court expungements. When somebody has a case and a judge decides to remove it, we have to clear out all the documents related. This is an extremely massive function, an important function for people, but it takes a lot of time. And they also manage, and I forgot to put it, our youth aid panel, which I'm extremely proud of, where we interact with the community. One of the detectives is assigned and works with our community youth aid panel to meet the families and walk them through any administrative or police type of incidents. Traffic safety unit, also known as the highway patrol units, our next unit. These guys are a jack of all trade. They do a lot. They really interface with our community or staff traffic meeting. When people are upset or frustrated, I believe almost every commissioner has attended one at least at some point in time, and that impact carries through. And it's a team approach. Public Works, Engineering, everybody's in those meetings, parking, and we try and work through the problems with a team approach to fix the situation or at least mitigate it. They also do aggressive driving and DUI grants. I'm very proud that we have 2 officers trained in motor carrier safety inspection. They can take big trucks that come through the township. We make sure they're safe. They're allowed to pull them over, do a quick inspection or a very detailed inspection, and we have had unsafe trucks with no brakes, and they are towed from the scene. So we're very proud of that. They also conduct our special traffic incidents where they may respond out, handle either a crash or just simply do traffic studies. So they do quite a bit of those things. Our parking authority, another sort of catch-all of everything. One of the most important things is the 9 crossing guards. Can't underestimate that we have to make sure those people are in place and trained, and Bill Gallagher does a great job. He also has to enforce all of our parking throughout the township, provide parking control for special events. We collect all the parking meters, and those related funds work directly with the finance department. And we assist the police. They assist the police at large events, and they are part of that whole process. Such when we shut North Wayne down, there's a lot of parking management that goes on. They also work with staff for the issuing of parking permits. Residents come to this, our service window, and obtain either discount cards or parking permits for their respective streets. They also maintain and work with all the kiosks and keep them up and running. And they, another unusual one is we coordinate the USDA deer culling that falls within our department. I could go on and on for hours, but I know it is late at night. I love talking about the Radnor Police. One of the things we have 2023 requests, we talked about the patrol fleet, which you guys have already helped us out with today. We have the indoor range is not working, and we're working with the manager and the finance director on that issue. Mobile in-car computers, although given to us from the county, they don't give them out anymore, so we're going to need to upgrade those. Those are another thing. And then we have a license plate reader concept for the township that we'd like to bring before the board in the near future to discuss how technology can help fight crime and keep Radnor as safe as possible. And I will stress to the community that I believe this is an extremely safe township. We count on all of the residents and the commissioners to help call in information. We can't be everywhere at all the same time, so it is a partnership here at the Township building. And as I close out, I just have to thank Mr. White and the other department heads, their leadership and teamwork. We would not be the department we were without them.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the chief? Excellent. Thanks for your presentation. Who's next? Mr. Foster.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Fellow department heads, Mr. White, Township Manager. But I could be frank, we're here to talk about Public Works. So with no further ado, let's start the presentation. Public Works is a department that has several divisions within it. It's made up of 55 employees. It has about 6 different divisions. It's sanitation, highway, parks maintenance, the sanitary sewer department, vehicle maintenance, and also facilities maintenance. The way that the divisions are structured, even though they are separate divisions within that department, they all work together. All of them are cohesive, so whether you take highway, vehicle maintenance, sanitation, sewer, parks maintenance, facilities, they are all called upon to work together. And this is mainly seen when it comes to some of our big events, whether it's snow plowing, our leaf collection, which will be starting soon, trash collection, some of the sewer repairs that takes place, and even when it comes to our township parks and the facilities, we all kind of pull from each other because everybody has expertise, and we try to utilize that instead of just looking at a particular department or division and letting them stay there. Let's take our first division, sanitation. I have a little picture up there. Most of you probably see these gentlemen going up and down the streets, picking up trash, recycling, yard waste, whatever it may be. This division is made up of 22 hardworking employees. In that division, the trash and recycling is split up into 7 routes, and they provide service for over 8,000 residents. Now, Here's just some of the highlights or services that the sanitation division supplies. But if I can draw your attention to the final bullet point or tab, if you will, where it mentions the trash is collected each week. It mentions 140 tons approximately. So just to put that into perspective for you, because it doesn't sound like anything but a lot of trash. If you were to take the weight of 140 tons, that's the equivalent of 80 mid-sized cars. So that parking lot outside, the lower parking lot by the creek, that parking lot can hold 80 cars. That is what those 22 employees, they pick up in just 2 days, every week, all year long. So it shows their dedication, and this is done in all sorts of weather also. Next, we have our highway division. It's also highway and streets, but it's made up of 11 dedicated employees. Again, if we look at all the services they provide, I apologize for not being able to say everything, but I want to draw attention to just some of the extraordinary things that these gentlemen do, or these staff employees. If we look at that last bullet point, it mentions that they paint all intersections, pavement markings using 200 gallons of paint annually. So let's put that into perspective also. If we look at the Radnor Shire room, and if they paint from floor to ceiling, all walls in here, they would paint this room 20 times over. So that is how much gallons of paint they go through on an annual basis every year, painting the stop bars, the crosswalks, the intersections. And this is something that they do basically probably about 5 months out of the year, maybe less than that, because of the time that they have to paint. So it really shows their dedication and how fast they can get things done and get it done the right way. Let's go into our Parks Maintenance Division. There's 12 employees that work in that division. And the part that I really enjoyed about this, I mean, there's so many things that all of the staff members do in that department, but again, drawing attention to something that really stands out, that bottom tab again, it mentions how they mow approximately 200 acres of grass in just 5 days. And again, this is only April through October. That 200 acres of grass is equivalent to cutting a football field 150 times. And they have to get this done in just 5 days. And that's not the whole crew. There's only about 4 or 5 staff members that make up that crew that goes around and cuts the grass all throughout the township, all the parks. Next, we have our sanitary sewer division. There's 3 members that make up that team. And here's some of the duties that they perform. The PA1 calls, or some people know the 811 markouts that have to be done. They've done over 5,500 in 2021. Now, that's an important number, because any time before any contractor, or even us as a township, can put as so much as a shovel in the ground, the utilities have to be marked out. And the township is responsible for the sewer part of those utilities. So it averages out to about 25 markouts a day that have to be done. And if we don't get these done in a timely fashion, there are penalties and fines that we would have to pay. So we're able to make sure things are done in a timely way where we don't have to waste any of the residents' money, and make sure we don't have any of these fines assessed to us. But even that bottom tab where it mentions the 205 miles of sanitary sewer lines that run throughout this township, that's the equivalent of driving from Radnor to New York and back again to Radnor. So that just gives a little bit of a perspective in regards to how much work that these 3 gentlemen care for. And we work very closely with Mr. Nursini, so he helps us out a lot with trying to mark these lines and know exactly where they are. Next, we have our vehicle maintenance division, part of Public Works. It's made up of 3 well-trained mechanics who work on heavy duty, motorcycles, automotive technicians. They handle all of that comes their way. And it's over 130 vehicles that they're responsible for, also some of the equipment that we run. So it's not just the vehicles. But the part that I really appreciate, and this kind of came to my attention probably last week because we had a situation, they perform roadside assistance on trash trucks and township vehicles. I guess I kind of forgot how important it is to have a AAA service, roadside assistance service at your beck and call. But a lot of times through our plowing, when it comes to the winter, we have hoses break on trucks, and we can't drive it in, dripping that hydraulic fluid all over the road. These gentlemen will come out dead of winter, snow, we're out there plowing, and a lot of times they have to fabricate hoses and put it on right out there on the scene. So to have that type of dedication saves the township residents so much time and money, also with being able to get a job done and have it completed. Our last part of the Public Works Department is the facilities maintenance aspect. So all of the buildings that we have that we care for, whether it's the municipal building, the Public Works building, the senior center, the library, all of the buildings are underneath the care of that facilities maintenance when it comes to the Public Works Department. So all of these buildings we work together with. There's so many projects that have been done inside these buildings and on the outside that we're responsible for. So again, that's just another aspect. The last part is the Public Works Administration team, the people behind the scenes. You see the people that go out every day and you see them on the road. Well, these are the people that have to kind of stay behind and make sure that those orders are kind of given in a timely fashion. And I'm not going to mention names because this one staff member told me I was not allowed to. But if you call Public Works, 90% of the time you will hear one person's voice. And the job that she does, I just gave it away, but it's at least 4,000 to 5,000 calls that individual has to field in a yearly basis. And she does it with a pleasant voice and also a smile on her face. That job cannot be understated. Everything that Public Works is because of that staff member being able to help us have a transition and make sure that we can handle things in a timely fashion. So that is everything I had. Thank you again, Mr. White. Thank you, department heads, for coming in second. And commissioners, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to field those.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Does anybody have any questions for Ricky?
Yep, I just have one, and you alluded to it, but when does the leaf pickup start?
October 31st.
Okay, is that scheduled up on the website?
It is.
All right, good.
Yes, sir.
All right, appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tammy Cohen, Director of Parks and Recreation. Thank you so much for allowing me to present tonight and for all of your support. Our department is a small but mighty one. We consist of 4 full-time employees overseeing approximately 200 seasonal and contracted staff, volunteers, and community partners to achieve the quality of life services that we provide, of course, working diligently for the residents of Radnor Township. Our core areas of concentration, of course, include the programming and community events, the parks and facilities, and of course, which includes scheduling operations and projects. These actually are all mission-driven areas of our service. We're constantly focused on how we can rise to high standards of quality, how we can be inclusive, how we can be safe. We are not just service with a smile. We work very hard at working closely with our residents, not only in person to hear their feedback about programs and activities and parks, but also we conduct many surveys throughout the course of programming. So we understand how we're doing and we apply those checks and balances. We have approximately 175 programs, believe it or not, that we run during the year, run with very high standards for safety, for staffing controls and evaluations, and a lot of quality control goes into those. We're often told by many of our contracted services that run some of our programs that we're one of the most difficult departments and townships to work with because of our high standards that we have. And that's something that we take very seriously and have a lot of pride in offering. We have programming for all ages, preschoolers all the way up to adults. Lots of great options for everyone. We're always looking for new ideas. One of our staple programs up and running, believe it or not, since 1941, Radnor Day Camp. In the last several years, we have a very excellent rating and feedback. There's a great performance that happens at that program every summer, something that we take a lot of pride in. It's our annual camp performance and art show. We have an annual wizarding camp that takes place, led by our very own program coordinator and program supervisor, Tracy Kroom and Heather DeCanzio. It's 14 years in successful running. We're very proud of our champions programming that we have for children with developmental differences that are offered throughout the year. We also offer a lot of preschool programming. We have a lot of things ranging from sports and activities, performing arts, and of course, recently a nature program that we just launched. And this is an area where we have seen considerable growth, as you can see, over the last several years. In addition, our pickleball programming and our tennis programming have seen amazing increases in participation, obviously causing a lot of impacts on the department to keep up with and continue to offer programming and balanced spaces. We have approximately 15 plus or minus events that we offer annually. Many are crossing over into their 10-year milestone. We have one coming up this Sunday rather, in its third rescheduling date, the Fall Harvest and Great Pumpkin Patch event. It's in its 10th year. Wheels of Wayne in downtown Wayne, great community event every spring. And of course, Santa's Delivery, it's one we just cannot seem to keep up with every year with increased participation. Last year alone, we had another increase of 20%. We also have a lot of specialized events like our pickleball tournaments and our teen flashlight egg hunts for more defined groups. And this year, we worked with members of the community and took part in the planning for the Unity in Our Community block party event over on Highland Avenue in the Odorrcio neighborhood. Was really a great endeavor for us. In addition, community partners are a big thing to what we do and how we deliver our events and all of our programs. Probably about 150 plus that we work with just between the community organizations as well as all of the sponsors. Of course, our biggest team is interacting with our township departments. We interact with all of them on many different levels and many different ways. And through the events, really it's mostly working with police and public works the most and really enjoy that partnership. Several awards and recognitions that we've had over the last several years. One in specific up there in the upper left-hand corner was for programming during the pandemic, for a really awesome little program we had with preschoolers exploring the Willows Park and the trail on Skunk Hollow. We oversee all of our own marketing and promotions. We're constantly selling all of our services, all of our communications that go out to residents, even those that have to do with park-related items. We maintain approximately 100 department web pages and all of our social media. These are some of the posts that we have out there. We also have a weekly newsletter. I know Molly had referred to it as being pretty popular. Hopefully we get some more signups as a result of tonight. Switching gears over to the parks and facilities, we have a massive parks and facilities system here in Radnor Township. Some of the highlights, obviously, 26 parks. We have all the 11 playgrounds. We have the hiking trails, of course, the skate park, Radnor Activity Center at Sulpizio Gymnasium, and a number of other spaces. One of our core duties we spend a lot of time in is scheduling those facilities. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into that. Approximately 15,000 annual hours that we oversee, more than 50 user groups across all the areas, really. So the athletic fields, of course, take up the big bulk of those. And scheduling all of that, there comes a lot of daily nuances in balancing increased usages. We've seen community sports organizations on the rise in terms of participation, so it's a balance at all of our sites. Unauthorized usages are a big one, something that we deal with on a daily basis. Balancing, of course, feedback from neighbors, inquiries that come in, reporting that comes in from a number of different areas. We also oversee the capital projects, of course, in tandem with the engineering department, and lead those in working with the Parks and Recreation Board and all of the residents. And of course, in cooperation with the Public Works Department, time and attention that goes into the maintenance needs and maintenance projects and special projects that happen within the parks. So a couple of big ones that happened just this past year, we had basketball court replacements at Odorrcio Park. You can see the differences there. Cowan Park. We also did a beautification project with Public Works over at Emlyn-Tennell. We had the Emlyn-Tennell Cutter Ship poster dedication. We installed communication boards for nonverbal users of our parks over at Clemacrone Park, and several others, which really included a lot of tree plantings throughout this past year, and a lot of other improvements to the park, and a lot more to come on the horizon. We're still working through the comprehensive park improvement renovations for Fenimore Woods. We're endeavoring one right now with Odorrcio Park, and we have a number of other capital projects and facilities that lie on the horizon that I know you'll take a look at in the capital budget. And of course, we heard about the trail development projects tonight. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank you again for the opportunity to present, and thank you to Mr. White for his leadership. Really appreciate the time tonight and all of your support in helping us do what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cohen. Anybody have questions for Tammy? Excellent. Thanks for the presentations, all of you. Really wonderful job. I'm not seeing anybody else coming up, correct? That's all, right? That's everyone.
I got capital, so.
And now we have Mr. White closing us out. Sure.
So while Bill gets set up, will we be able to get those presentations? I mean, I think they're really impressive, and I would love to share it out, or are they going to be on the website so that our community can see it? I mean, you guys should be really impressed and proud of the work that you do for our community. So thank you very much for that, and would love to share that out.
Yes.
All right, let's see if I use the right mouse. That's a good sign. And once I go to slideshow. So I want to touch on the capital element of tonight's agenda. Similar to the trail discussions that we had earlier tonight, the goal of this discussion is to present to the board what's included in the capital portion of the budget that you all have, and then tie it to the recommendations that were made as part of the budget. So I'm going to just step through some high-level summary notes, a capital overview in terms of terminology, what we mean when we say capital, how Radnor Township divides its capital obligation or capital assets up into different buckets and so forth, and describe each of those categories in a little bit more summary, a little bit more detail, and then jump into the spreadsheet. So in terms of some high-level presentation notes, this discussion, while new to at least a couple of the commissioners that are newer on the board, it is a continuation of conversations that have been going on for 7, 8, 9+ years. The township really has not had a dedicated capital funding program. In the last 2 years, we didn't really get into a lot of detail in this area because we were focused on balancing the operating end of the budget while being mindful of the impacts that both COVID and the reassessment were having to the taxpayers of Radnor. Having said that, having an adequate capital funding is critical towards our goals of having long-term financial sustainability, and as we plan for years and years down the road, as Radnor Township owns and maintains a lot of assets, many of which were just highlighted in some of these presentations, which is why when we were putting the budget together, we made this one of the priorities and something that we were asking the board to consider as part of our long-term planning discussions. The good news is I do think that this is something that we can be successful. If we take a multifaceted, bite-sized approach, multifaceted is we have different options for funding these assets. The bite-sized approach is more a reference to the constraints that we're all aware of, both in terms of finances as well as staff time to tackle additional projects, which is difficult for many of our departments to take on more based on what we just heard, how busy they already are. So capital, when we talk about what that means, we take our capital and we have 5 broad categories that we fund and account for capital in. I'll go into each one of those now. So departmental, this is funded through the general fund with a transfer every year. Included in the 2023 recommended budget is an allocation of about $1.3 million. What makes this group up is all of our fleet. So the 100 and some vehicles that the Public Works maintenance guys keep running and operating, as well as the departments actually out on the street using, as well as the township's contributions to the 2 fire companies that they use to replace their fleet vehicles. This group also includes departmental equipment, so basically any piece of equipment that's a capital designation that's not fleet, so technology, any kind of protective equipment, trailers, signs, kiosks, kind of the everything else bucket. Liquid fuels, this is the source of our road resurfacing program. Our funding, we combine a combination of both the state liquid fuels as well as dollars from the general fund to get us to $1 million annually. This is included in the 2023 budget. For the last couple of years, we've been using the 2019 bond proceeds. There was a line item in there for road resurfacing. That's covering the township's $150,000 since we don't have dedicated funding coming from the general fund in any other way. And then we get about $850,000 from the state. The $1 million number is not is a targeted number, is a decision that was made approximately 8 or 9 years ago after an analysis by Mr. Norsini that determined that $1 million annually, plus or minus, puts us on an average, a 12 to 13 year cycle for all the township-owned roads. And I know Steve would want me to stress that some of the higher used roads would be resurfaced a little sooner than that. Some of the neighborhood roads may be a little bit longer, but the 12 to 13 year cycle is what the board at the time targeted, and that's where the $1 million number came from. We also use a small amount of these funds to supplement the salt budget every year for the snow removal program. Stormwater, this is one that I think we're mostly familiar with. We've spent the bulk of the last 3-4 years talking primarily about these projects. The source is entirely the stormwater fee. We account for this in a little bit different method than the other ones in that this is a project total approach, meaning as we add projects, the total number just goes up. That's why instead of $1 million per year, we are sitting on roughly $31.2 million of known stormwater projects. How that works is, the phone rings, Steve goes out, looks at an area. It might be like fix a pipe project, or it's one of these larger ones that we've been working with many of you for years on identifying a much, much larger flooding problem. The makeup of this group is infrastructure. We have existing culverts and pipes that need to be repaired and replaced regularly. We also are working on the various flood reduction and mitigation projects, and then we have some MS4 compliant projects on top of that. Sanitary sewer. We broke this up into 2 different funding statuses. There's the pipe, the actual infrastructure in the ground as it exists right now. Under a fully funded operational capital program, we would be systematically going through that inventory every year and replacing the old stuff that needs to come out with new pipe, and just doing that on an ongoing basis, as we've seen PECO do with their gas lines through many of our neighborhoods the last couple of years, Aqua as well. We are not there yet. And then on the second part of that is we have various physical assets, our pumping stations, that are also in need of upgrade, replacement. That is more of a project total. We would, if based on the condition of the pumping stations right now, $4.5 million is needed to replace those. And in any event, all of this is unfunded. As we've discussed in the last couple of years during budget season, we're having a hard time keeping up with our RHM payments on the operating side, which has made it difficult to have any realistic conversations about what is needed to fund capital. I'm hoping over the next couple of months we can dive back into this and start having those conversations again. In the meantime, our contingency plan operationally or administratively for emergencies and pipes that pop, we do have general fund. We have a healthy fund balance. That would be the first go-to. And then we always have the capacity to borrow should it be a massive job. But that's one area that we need to look at. Infrastructure, this is the last category. This is the other area that is unfunded. And when I referred to earlier as not having a dedicated annual capital funding program, this is the primary group. from the general fund that I'm referring to. So this makes up all of our facilities, our parks, trails, parking lots, lighting, which includes both street lighting and intersections, crosswalks, sidewalks, and any of the other infrastructure type assets that we own and operate. Right now, we do not fund these outside of what we've done in 16 and 19, which was specific borrowings to fund those. So tying all that to what is in front of you in terms of the budget, we have, thanks to the efforts of all of the department heads, we have a master spreadsheet that includes every single piece of equipment, fleet, as well as all of these capital projects identified, and we've got them summarized in these tables, which are included in the budget document. This is the fleet and departmental capital. We have it broken up into, whether we're paying cash for it, or whether we're leasing the vehicle. The lease committed are the vehicles that we've already decided to lease. Those are just the remaining payments on existing obligations. And then there is a small amount of revenue that we get in terms of selling assets or interest. We have all of that broken down by department. And actually, in the budget itself, you can get all the way down to the, well, now it just disappeared. But you can get all the way down to the per vehicle information, which is a summary of what exists on this tab. Like I said, it's every single piece of equipment, both moving fleet and equipment that all of our departments have. And this is kept up to date on a pretty regular basis, but updated in its entirety in July and August, which is what the departments are doing at the beginning part of the budget process. Switching gears over to the capital project. So this is the general fund capital that we currently don't have dedicated funding for. This category right now, as we stand, we have $27.7 million of known capital projects in these various areas of the township. $26.5 million of that is replacing existing assets that we already own that are aging out. And then there's a smaller element of new or expanded assets that, through the different departments are looking at in ways to enhance those. You've heard me talk in other presentations about the township facilities and a little bit more urgency on that front. What I'd like to recommend and what's part of the budget is carving out, I know it's truncated by our screen here, but this says facilities. If we take a look at the facilities part of this in a little bit more detail, there are 4 buildings and then street lighting that I would like the board's consideration on moving forward with addressing some of the conditions there. Public Works specifically we have garage doors, replacing the lighting to LED, which is consistent with the energy reduction plan. Natural gas heaters, and then a significant amount of actual building repairs. We've referred to their roof as Swiss cheese. Every single time it rains, there's water literally flowing into the building at various buildings at various locations. And the surface needs to be completely ripped out and redone. You actually struggle to walk on it. From one side of the facility to the other. Then we have the rack at Sulpizio Gym. This is another facility that is a return item. This was discussed in detail a few years ago. Many of the issues that existed then are still issues today. Estimating out the various elements of the buildings that needs to be addressed. The significant ones, of course, is buttoning up the building from the elements. It's another one that leaks. It leaks from every side. It comes in through the top, the side, and comes up from the bottom. So that's one that we got to address on every corner. And then obviously there's elements within that need to be addressed too. In almost every case, the mechanical devices are out of date at the Public Works garage, at the rack. So HVAC units are in need of repair or replacement. The Township building, various replacements or upgrades here. One of the things that the chief had pointed out in his presentation is getting the air filtration system at downstairs up and running so that they can use that again for their firearm certifications. But in addition to that, we've got lighting, we've got accessibility, again, HVAC units. This building opened in 2008. Those units are starting to go. So investing some money into this building as well. And then at the Willows Park, this is the Willows Cottage. So deciding what we want to do with that facility and potentially investing some money either in restoring it or something else that might be an option. Then the last thing on this list is street lighting. This is coming out of the energy reduction plan, is swapping out the township street lights with energy efficient LED bulbs. This project does have some ROI to it. There would be an anticipated reduction in our electric bill. It certainly wouldn't drive the conversation from a business perspective, but in addition to being more energy efficient, it would have a positive impact to the township's bottom line. That is a high-level summary of what we're looking to do with the facilities. If interested, what we would like to do is early 2023 is come back and go into a lot more detail about what this means and decide what the board's comfortable with moving forward on or not, and trying to narrow down or prioritize what we can move forward with more on the short term versus waiting. If we were to try to save money, getting up to $9.5 million is going to take some time. Then similarly, I'm not going to go into all the detail, but this is the guts of that summary that we're just looking at. It's all of the projects identified at the construction level of accounting. Sanitary sewer, again, this is one that's almost its own meeting. It's talking about the current condition of the system and then discussing different ways to fund it. The sell, maintain decision or discussion is still out there. It really hasn't advanced, but the assets are still there. They're getting a year older every year, and I know Steve reminds me all the time about his concern in terms of pipes that need to be replaced. And then, as I identified earlier, we have several pumping stations that are also in need of significant repair or just complete replacement given their age. Finally, we have the Stormwater Fund. This report is organized in a different way. We have stormwater management, we have MS4, and we have our infrastructure projects. Instead of funding these or trying to forecast these out over an annual basis, based on the request of commissioners, a different board a few years ago, a scoring system was developed for each of the projects. And when doing the design or the estimating for the project, Steve applies a score in conjunction with the consultants doing the design. And so the scoring, the rank goes across the top, 100 being the highest and down, and then all of the projects down the one side. So instead of forecasting this out over some period of time, we're prioritizing in terms of some sort of ranking. Many of these are already included in the funding plan that the board adopted earlier this year. As I pointed out, we're at about 30 million plus, and the funding plan includes approximately 14 to 15 million of those projects, as well as some of these smaller ones that we know that what we plan to use annual cash to tackle. So these reports are all in the budget that you have right now. So tying this all back to what you have in front of you and what's part of the recommendation is this is all in the budget. Like I presented in the presentation portion, we have funding for departmental, liquid fuels, and stormwater are in really good shape. The areas that need a little bit more attention or a lot more attention is sanitary sewer and infrastructure. I would prioritize, as we stand here now, I'd prioritize the infrastructure first as I mentioned, we do have a contingency for the sanitary, and there's much larger discussions necessary with that system that we just haven't really had a chance to dive into. The part of what was recommended in terms of funding the budget was starting to incorporate capital into that plan. If you recall the presentation from the last meeting, starting off with identifying or generating money for a facilities bond so we can tackle those projects and get them off the list first. That leaves us with the rest of that infrastructure or capital project list. And if we were able to identify a certain amount from our budget annually to go into the capital fund, we can start ticking off that list over time. And as forecasted, with a little bit of a course correction in year one, and then minor incremental adjustments in each year after that, the revenue generated from those adjustments is significant, and we can start to address these capital projects. So that was part of the thought process going into what was included in the budget and what's being forecasted over the next 5 years. Yeah, obviously we're only looking at 2023 right now in terms of what budget numbers to pass, but part of what we want to present is how does next year impact the year after, and what decisions can we start making now that might put us in a better spot 4 or 5 years down the road. So that's what we're trying to do with capital.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions for Bill? You're looking like you have a question.
Well, we're going to have more comprehensive discussion next meeting, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This was, like I said at the beginning, this was meant to just introduce or go over what is in front of you now in terms of the budget, not really looking for any kind of direction or decision tonight. Unless you really wanted to dive into something.
I was about to
Then-
say, does anybody
then
have
let's
any
go. I
general
mean, we're here.
questions about process or what Bill gave us tonight, knowing that we will dive in deeper? I just want to give people an opportunity.
Sure.
Okay, very thorough, thank you.
Again, I'm the messenger. It's the department heads and Bob Tate and Amy who've put all that together.
Well, I just want to take a minute to thank all of the department heads and the township manager for very informative, thorough, and really positive presentations. It's always great to hear all of the good work, and I'm always impressed by just the sheer amount of things that you get done. So thank you for that, and we will keep everything we heard in mind as we talk budget as the weeks go on. So just really appreciate the time and effort that was put into that. Thank you. I will move now to reports of board liaisons. Does anyone have a report from their committees?
A real quick announcement. So the Radnor Library, Friends of Radnor Library, which is a volunteer organization that provides funds for library acquisitions, programming, and services, will be conducting their book sale this weekend, October 21st through the 23rd. And it looks like the general public sale will be Saturday, October 22nd and Sunday, October 23rd. And on Sunday, the books are discounted 50%. So if you want more information about that, you can go on the radnorlibrary.org website. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? This isn't actually a board liaison, but I did want to just recognize that the Willows Park Preserve had their annual fundraiser, and they recognized Tammy Cohen for her amazing contributions, not only to the Willows Park, but across the community. So thank you very much, Tammy. It was nice to see you recognized that way. Seeing no other reports from board liaisons, I will move to new business. Any new business? Move into old business. Anyone want to raise old business? Okay, public participation, last opportunity to speak tonight. Welcome.
This is Mike. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I just want to thank you all. This was one of the first commissioners' meetings that I've sat through, and I really just love how much open dialogue you have, the questions that you all are asking. I just think it's really amazing to see, and just a sacrifice that you all make by, being here till 10 o'clock at night. We really appreciate that. And I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the Willows Park Preserve. My family had an event there last week, and it was really such an amazing experience, like being in the Willows Mansion and the work that Will Nord has done. I believe he's the maybe executive director, but really just has handled it with so much care and was really accommodating to all of our needs. So I'd really encourage anybody that's considering having an event there to look into it, because it's really an amazing facility that we have in Radnor. So thanks for that. And one other, question I had was about bamboo. I think bamboo is a really amazing species, and I know there's some fear around it because it can be labeled as invasive and it can spread pretty quickly, but the benefits of it are really extraordinary in terms of what it can be used for construction, for preventing soil erosion, for allowing fruitless land to become more fertile again, and for building, for all kinds of different things. I mean, we can talk for hours about the benefits of it. I would encourage you all to explore it, but I know there's fear around it, but in terms of growing it on your own private property, I think the risk of it spreading can be easily eliminated by just having different trenches that you can build. There's other ways as well, but I would encourage Radnor to maybe reconsider the current stance it has on bamboo, because it's really important that we care for the environment. And another benefit of bamboo is it produces 30% more oxygen than trees, and it also grows much faster. So if we're considering flooding and different, horrific events that could happen in Radnor, I think bamboo could be a beautiful way to prevent it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you so much.